other systems.
Yeah. Hail to the Fandom Menace. This is Bear Nerd Fun. Well, we got Itchy Baka, we got Immortal Coil, we got Tommy, and we got Mike, the editor-in-chief of Fandom Menace book. How's everyone doing today?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us again, Bear.
Hey, no problem. Well, Steven is missing in action. He can't get to his computer, and he may show up. Also, Wes Moody may show up. Something must have come up. So, The Rise of Skywalker. What did y'all think of that?
Well, I had several issues with it. Let's start with how come Maz Kanata didn't finish the story of the Anakin lightsaber?
From what I understand, it's finished in a comic book.
Oh, is it? Which one and how much does it cost?
One of them. I don't know.
Yeah.
Hey, Itchy, remember when guaranteed obsolescence only applied to electronics?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, there was a time.
I myself have not seen Rise of Skywalker. I have no interest. Literally, I don't even have morbid curiosity. No interest whatsoever. And I certainly don't want to give these people any more of my money. It doesn't even feel like there's a Star Wars movie out right now.
I'd have to agree with that feeling. Yeah. Yeah, because honestly, the only reason why I went is because a few of my subscribers asked me to go see it, so they didn't have to.
Sure.
So I took the bullet for them, and a bullet it was, let me tell you.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, I couldn't. The thought of sitting through 2.5 hours of a movie I have no interest in is just not a fun thought.
Let's break it down. Let's break it down into retrospect real quick. Now, how often do you remember a Star Wars movie in the past not getting the fanfare and the talk of all these people outside waiting to get into the theaters or in the lobbies crowding it in costume with lightsabers? Have you heard of any of that with this new movie at all?
No. Or, the footage of, news crews going there, of people sleeping overnight in line and talking.
Exactly.
I haven't seen any of that. None of it.
Well, for real, Tommy, the first time that, a side thing came up, like, okay, Solo or Rogue One. Like, I like Rogue One because of Vader. Did not like Solo. But this is the first time that a main title, like no shit episode with the crawl and the John Williams music, failed to perform.
Yeah.
Failure from the start.
It's disgustingly sad, and it really is. And everybody wonders why people are so agitated about it.
Well, if I could say a couple things here, gentlemen.
Yeah, go ahead.
I bought my this ticket, as you can see. I bought this after the premiere, after the critics' reviews began, and I knew it was going to be what we thought it was. And like I said in my Twitter posts, I felt horrible, and I didn't go because of, like Ichi said, we shouldn't be giving these people our money, and I agree. But when I saw what was happening and I started thinking about who built our dreams as we grew up and the studios and the people that go to work every day, I thought to myself, I'm going to go just for work purposes and just go to my local thing. Even though I don't go out much, I'm going to make myself do it, and I'm going to go check it out. And I'm just going to go see, is there any way that there's a Star Wars feeling in my fucking town, And so I bought this ticket. And I'll show you this. Oops, sorry. And I took this screenshot. I'll show you if I can find this. Is what I found when I got there. And of course, I don't think it'll be too much of a surprise to anyone. One sec here. Can you guys see that? As I pulled up in the cab. Is that showing?
It looks like empty space.
Wow.
Well, that's me pulling up in the cab, so there's no cause. Now, keep in mind the 3D show is sold out, apparently. I went to the regular shows, about 60% capacity, so there's maybe 40 or 50 seats left from about midpoint down to the front. The back was filled, though. But there was nobody in the lobby, maybe 20 people mulling around. There was no excitement. There was no event. There was no Star Wars. There was nothing like what the fellows were just referring to in some kind of what we were talking about when we were worried about anticipation of The Mandalorian. What's it going to mean to have Star Wars on a small screen as opposed to the big screen? Are we still going to have that event feeling? Is it still going to be that spark, that magic? And that's what we've lost, obviously. And I don't think The Mandalorian does, but it does have something. And it's a lot closer to the Star Wars that I think the fandom needs than, like Itchy says, that we shouldn't be giving our money to the people that are doing it right, not the people that are doing it wrong. And as you can see by my local theater, that's why. You can see by my local theater, that's why.
Hell.
Yeah, it's been the same thing with store aisles for a Star Wars section. CJ, Drew, and all them were live, and I did a little quick video clip and took a picture. I can't find it at this moment. But you know how long a shopping cart is, regular size shopping cart?
Mm-hmm.
That's how big the section for Star Wars was. That was at the Tomewater Walmart. Now, the Lacey Walmart, they had bits and pieces here and there. You had to look for it. Nobody cared.
Yeah.
No Star Wars banners, no nothing. Yelm Star Wars, it was kind of the same. The Yelm Walmart, same way. I went to 3 different Walmarts. And Tomewater was the only one that actually had a section. And it was only a shopping cart long. And that's not very long. That's a little over 4 feet.
I think, Bear, the night of the show, I think you and I were talking afterwards, and I think you and I shared a similar story, because I went to Walmart, and, because that's what you were talking about doing, so I went and checked it out. I had to pick up a couple things for the boy, and when I got there, of course, tiny little section, I'm in Canada, so it's a totally separate scenario. It should be anyway, or you would think, so it might be different, I get there, same idea, though, and the manager person, or some helper person, greeter, or whatever the hell, walking by. And I said, excuse me, I said, it's Christmas, isn't it? And they're like, yeah. And I said, well, where's Star Wars? Like, what's going on here,
Yeah.
It's strange.
Yeah, I've noticed the same thing. Every store I go to, it's the same thing. Walmart, Targets, any department store. The Star Wars section in the toy department is very small. Sometimes only an end cap. It's just remarkable.
Well, I know my local Target, I want to say this was more than 2.5 weeks ago. They had already taken down the big giant Kylo and Rey display that they had up. That was ripped down. And the section for the new Star Wars stuff was maybe 1.5 to 2 feet wide at most. And most of it was already on clearance.
Yeah.
I saw somebody posting $14 clearance stuff today on Twitter. I think that it was an end cap of somewhere. I can't remember who though, but I think I saw one this morning.
Well, yeah, you're gonna start seeing those yellow clearance price tags on all that Star Wars stuff. Because honestly, the only stuff, because I got both my boys 2 Darth Vaders, the 10-inch figures. I got them Darth Vader, and the OG stuff was selling. Luke was selling the 10-inch one. Those were selling, and Darth Vader. Everything else wasn't selling. And if Luke's face didn't look right, that didn't sell either. And there's a lot of figures out there where his face, he don't even look like Luke. He looks like that one animation. Wasn't there a small animation clip that they did? Lucasfilm did.
Well, you know what, Bear? I don't even think that really matters, because if you look back to the old toys from 77, well, actually they didn't come out until like 78 because it took them a year to make the toys and they had to make it up, but those figures did not look anything at all like the actors, and they sold like hotcakes. Why? Because there was excitement for the brand. They didn't have to look exactly like them.
Well, they had a resemblance. You
I don't know some of
but
those
it didn't
toys...
look good. It wasn't great.
No, but you got to understand, I think me and Itchy are more to the generation that actually got those fake boxes the first Christmas, I think, and so. You got to understand that the sophistication of toys at that point, Star Wars in toy making, was also strange and new. It wasn't just
Yep.
the fact that it was a movie thing. It wasn't that at all. It was that figures could interact with each other and that they would fit inside vehicles, and that like there was a whole like you're looking at it from a 21st century perspective. Like it was different and new just in the way that the toys, the type of plastic. It was some of it like the bodies were hard, but the arms were soft. Like it was weird.
Yeah, well, they had a lot of that bromine and everything in those toys back
Yeah.
then. Because I grew up in that time. I had the early bird certificate, and I got
Nice.
I got those figures in the mail. Unfortunately, being a dumbass when I became a teenager, I sold them for like pennies on the dollar, like an idiot. But
Yeah, before that, you had, Planet of the Apes. Mego figures were probably the most popular before that. And
Don't forget Evil Knievel.
Evil Knievel, the $6 million man action figure, which was real hard plastic, but, it was a pretty big figure. But yeah, Mike is great. There was nothing like the Star Wars type of toy until that came along. It was almost kind of a throwback to the old metal toy soldiers, by reducing their size so it can fit in your hand. And it was really unusual.
well, it was right around the same time that they had those Battlestar Galactica figures with the ships and everything too.
Yeah.
Well, they pulled those ones. They pulled those ones because somebody lost an eye or something. I think it was.
No, somebody swallowed a missile.
Yeah.
Oh, swallowed a missile. That's
That's back before they had toy warnings. But remember those Evil Knievels? They used to fit on those motorcycles.
Yeah.
You stick them in that wind-up thing. You know how many of those I went through when I was between 3 and 4? 6. I burnt up 6 of them. My dad had to keep buying them.
And Mattel loved
because
you.
I
Mattel
did
loved
everything with those things. They jumped ramps. It wasn't the bikes that wore out.
When your dad wrote
it
them a
was the
letter,
crank. My dad had to keep getting them, so I had a ton of action figures of Evil Knievel. Then I know, folks, that's off topic a little bit, but it's an interesting story.
Well, no, but those.
My dad had to sit down and have a talk with me because back then, when I was 3 and 4, every 3 and 4-year-old that loved motorcycles and ramp jumping and stuff like that looked up to Evil Knievel, and Evil Knievel just bashed the hell out of someone's head with a baseball bat.
Oh yeah.
He narrowly avoided spending a life sentence in
jail,
in prison. And so my dad had to have the talk with me and tell me what happened, explain to me that you don't bash people on the head with a baseball bat because you have differences. And I don't know if any of you guys remember that when you were kids, because I suspect there's a few of us here that were close to that age group,
Yeah.
And
I don't remember that particular story. I remember just the pop culture imagery of Evil Knievel and all the toys that were out. I still have a picture of Evil Knievel up on my wall with his motorcycle. He was a pretty popular dude at the time.
Oh yeah, man, and he pulled off some of the jumps that had never been done, and the people that had tried it had been either killed or maimed.
Yeah.
Well, back to the toy thing just for one moment that I thought was interesting, since we were talking about kind of the revolution in the toy making itself. I remember, everybody will probably remember watching an interview at a certain point where George, he talked a couple of times about how when you invent things, you invent things not because you're artistic, but because you're confronted with a technical problem in your art. And so you have to make an invention to get around your obstacle. And so, it should be kept in mind, too, another remarkable thing about Kenner at that time was they weren't set up for 10 million toys a year. And when these boys were landed with this, because they fought tooth and nail to get it, because some of the fellows realized what it could be. And when they got it,
they had to ramp up. Yes,
and
sir.
So a lot of the inventiveness and a lot of the sophistication that you see is literally the raw ideas right from the most creative minds that could be assembled to just make it work. You got 8 months, gentlemen, do it. So it's kind of interesting in that way too.
Well, here's another interesting fact about Kenner. When they were not ready to produce all those toys, that they had to pull other product lines that they hadn't, just slap Star Wars stickers on it just to get stuff out there to meet demand.
Me and Itchy laugh now because we use that term a lot, label slapping, and that's exactly where it came from. That's exactly where it used to be a G.I. Joe plastic Jeep that you pedal. Well, you just paint it black and slap a Star Wars sticker, and there you go. It's a freaking TIE fighter,
Yep.
So, label slapping.
Hail to the chat.
Hail to the chat.
Yeah, the Battlestar toy line had done that quite a bit as well. Just slapping a Battlestar label on anything that they had molds for.
Oh yeah, or molds they could steal.
Yeah.
I like watching the old creator studio interviews and where they're kind of bickering over who created what and who did what. It's kind of, like old Petty Junior High, little tiffies, and these people, some of them are 70, 80 years old, and they're kind of looking at each other funny, and you're thinking, my word, this is hilarious.
Yeah, it's pretty funny stuff.
Hey, do any of you guys remember the toothbrush that they used to have for Star Wars? It was like a big, clunky looking lightsaber type toothbrush with all kinds of gears in it.
Yeah, the old electric toothbrush. They took like a C battery.
Yes.
The only
Yes.
thing
Yeah,
that reminds me
clunky.
of is Daniel's father's in Gremlins, the toothbrush shaving kit thing that he made. It's like a hand grenade.
Well, that lightsaber toothbrush was actually part of another one of their lines that they just swapped the damn labels out on. Because that was actually
that was the McClunky model.
yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Did you guys see the latest Collider video where they're using McClunky over and over and over now?
I did, Mike. That was very clever.
I wonder where they got that from.
Something else that I managed to snag this afternoon. There was what is it called? George and did I put it in here? There's a picture that Collider used in one of their videos where Harrison Ford and George are talking about memes, and they put up a meme of it's like the ID meme, but it's the Baby Yoda, and the bouncer pulls out the ID and is holding up Baby Yoda's stunned face, like, "What are you looking at, dude?" And it shows a driver's license that's old Yoda,
Oh yeah.
It's just a switch out on the classic meme there, but
Yeah.
in any case, what's hilarious is that there's a famous Comicsgate personality that the meme is actually designed for. So it's one of these wonderful dual layer memes that only like mainstream people who look at it will think, hey, that's funny because it's the ID meme. But the reason that it was put out and inadvertently Collider chose it and used it. But it has a double meaning behind it as well for another community's worth of people. That it's a totally different meaning. So it's like one of these rare double layered memes. And the only reason that it has that level of sophistication is Collider posted it. So, it's pretty amazing meme actually. So thank you, Collider.
Well, I'm very glad that Collider
catching a little bit of the fourth wave.
Yeah, they've given us validity.
Well, it's always kind of funny when Collider will pick something up from the Fandom Menace or from the fourth wave.
More often the second, not so much the first.
I had some other bad news, Itchy.
What's that?
Our poor friend Scotty Mendelson has to publish this, throw this up there. I'm sure he was very unhappy. Throw that one up there.
Plunge is 71%.
Sure he was very happy to
Friday.
have that.
Oh. I was just
shit.
I was just revisiting an article on IGN about The Last Jedi. It had a massive second weekend drop at the box office. It was a 68.9% drop from its 220 million debut. And I was kind of wondering how close was that going to be for Rise of Skywalker. If that 71% holds for the whole weekend or worsens, wow, that will be something.
Yeah, it's here, let me
I don't think I'm at a loss for words for saying that this has been a very nefarious undertaking.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? You could pretty much equate the whole Disney movies mess basically to a kick to the tank, because both leave a shitty experience in its aftermath. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that term. If you get kicked in the tank, you crap yourself.
You what?
Serious. Look it up. It's pretty hysterical. If you get kicked in your taint, you will crap yourself.
I've never heard of that location. Where is it located?
Yeah. Okay, Bear.
Oh, and I meant to say too, Itchy, that this is the meme that I found from Vilned that goes along with poor Scotty's admission this morning. Oh shit! Poor Scotty.
Scotty tears. Not to be confused with our Scotty.
No affiliation whatsoever.
None. One's a bag of information air, and the other is just, what do you call it? Water under the bridge gone away. Yeah. So, what do you think of this? The events that happened in The Mandalorian season episode 8. It's the end of the season 1. Personally, I thought it was a short season.
Well, I want more information about what I heard. They're taking a hiatus. I thought they meant from movie making, not from the show, because if they stall on the show right now, it's lost. Okay, seriously.
I agree.
I think necessarily it had to be. Okay, they did not know what they had on their hands because, let's face it,
Yeah, but if Ryan
KK,
Johnson's...
JJ, yeah, they're not the most creative of creators, but you get somebody with like Favreau, Filoni, and their bullet points on their expression. Yeah, let's give them 8 episodes. Let's see what happens. And then Baby Yoda, pow. Everybody's like hard, like full mess. Right? And then they tease us. We see the Mando's face because I'm not alive. Tell me you did not have a feeling. Go.
I still think that the scene was brilliant. Do you know what I believe, though? From a director's point of view, the camera should have cut to behind his ears, so even though the helmet's off, you still don't get to see his face. I would have done that to my audience. I would have. And I want that mystery there, and I'm still talking about leave the damn masks on. I don't know.
Yeah, I found that very curious. The fact that nobody was around and the droid's not a human, so it didn't break his oath.
Well, it didn't. It was wonderful. It's wonderfully done. What I'm saying is I would have done exactly the same shoot, everything identical, except instead of showing his face, I would have cut to just behind his ear, and you would have been looking at the droid's face as he pulled the helmet off instead of seeing his face. I would have still left that a mystery.
Or a behind shot from the droid.
So you couldn't see his face.
Yeah.
Or how about better even yet, looking at the droid and just seeing like a kind of almost reflection of what his face looked like.
Could be.
A little bit more mystery would have been called for, I believe. I think you're right. Yeah.
I just to make a conversation. You know, all these people out there that want to freak out about this actor, there's plenty of pictures about him, and believe me, he's going to be at a lot of conventions. You're going to see his face. We're not talking about the actor. We're talking about a character. And this is, you know, this is the way. Like, Jesus.
The actor is a personification of the character being portrayed.
Like, that's one of the things I'm proud of in our community. People separate the actors from their, from their work. You know.
Wait a minute. Are you telling me that the actors and their work are not the same thing?
I hate to be the one to break it to you, Tommy.
What?
Mind blown.
Some people out there might find that difficult to believe or even to understand. I do get you, Tommy. I know it's miraculous, but you know, it's reality at a certain point.
This is actually hysterical. I used to have a friend, his sister actually thought like that, and she really believed, she could not understand how could Arnold Schwarzenegger get killed as a Terminator and show up again in another movie. She couldn't grasp that concept. It was actually quite hysterical. Really? Yeah, it was funny as shit.
Well, see, now we've just realized another reason why time travel should be thrown away as a plot device or any kind of storytelling device. Because, you know, look at the other after effects. It confuses, you know, slightly unintelligent people, you see?
Yeah, I kind of have the same feeling about TV shows that go forward in time and then reverse in time to show you what happened, and they keep doing it, and they really don't tell you what they're doing. And so I'm just kind of like, okay, where the fuck am I? Where are they at? I was like, shit. I got to go back and rewatch. Like, okay, this, that. Boom, back here. And then back to the beginning. Marvel, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. used to do that a little bit. And I don't know if you guys have watched The Witcher.
Yeah.
Man, you got
Fuck yeah.
you got to be able to, you got to be focused on that show and no interruptions, no distractions, because you blink, you're literally going to miss something. You're going to have to go back. It's like, oh, okay, this is where I blinked and they went back in time and showed a past event. But they don't do that. They don't change camera angle. They don't change, put a filter to let you know that you're in the past. I mean, it's really tricky.
Well, I don't know about you, but I was sitting there watching it, and yeah, I had to go back and rewatch it because I fell asleep. And then the show just bored the shit out of me.
What, The Witcher?
Yeah.
There's some parts where it's very dialogue-y, for sure.
What? You know what? I don't know nothing about the game. I never played it, and I never read the books. So, I mean, I guess in that instance, it really just didn't capture me all that much. I'm not saying it was bad, but it just didn't capture my attention enough to really sit there and watch it for hours on end.
Well, I'm probably one of the biggest book nerds out there. I've read every fantasy book you can think of, except for the more newer ones.
I've read a lot of them
school.
myself. Yeah.
Yeah, David Eddings, Robert Jordan.
Yeah. Michael Moorcock.
Yeah, Michael Moorcock. I've read a few of his stuff. They made a movie out of with Harrison Ford. What was that author's name of that movie? It was a book before. I've read that whole series.
Oh, you're talking about Ender's Game, maybe?
Right. Yeah, and yeah, Ender's Game. I've read a lot of the stuff by that author, and he's kind of similar too. There's a lot of time jumping back and forth on the story on what happened, and when I watched The Witcher, I kind of felt like I was in a book, and I was just like, wow, this feels like I'm in a book. So I was intrigued by it, and one episode turned into the last episode, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to rewatch that. Because I'd watch an episode here, watch an episode there, and they definitely have an interest in the storytelling, and that's what I like. I like storytelling in movies and TV shows, and that's one thing that we really haven't been getting a lot of. We've been getting a lot of agenda pushing.
Yeah.
And I'm more interested in the story. And I don't want basically agenda and stuff like that. And I always use Mercedes Lackey as an example of someone who can write a story for story's sake and not persuasion. Persuasion meaning whoever that person's interested in love-wise, whether it's the same sex or not. She didn't write stories based off of their persuasion. She wrote stories for story's sake, and she had a character. I don't remember the character's name, but the character was gay, and those were his strong relationships. But it wasn't about that. It was about the story, and it was about the character's strengths and what they could do and stuff like that. They were mages and they were fighting a war, and the story was about the story. It wasn't about who they were. Who they were in their relationships was secondary to the story. And Hollywood could really learn a good lesson by reading Mercedes Lackey's books.
Hey, Bear.
Yeah.
Just 1 second, if you don't mind. I would like to say hi to my little hoe out there in the chat, Sporking. You need to make me that money, boy. Get some more subs. Okay.
That's an ongoing joke.
So I wanted to bring up a point about reflection on this is a new actor that's involved in Star Wars, and for anybody watching The Mandalorian, he's the fellow that kind of took him out and betrayed him, the younger fella. Sort of the young Indiana Jones type character that we saw, I think it was in episode 5, was it? Jake Cannavale. Anyway, he posted this after being at the premiere, and to be honest with you, I know maybe professionally this looks bad for this young fella to be first time baptism in the Disney world, you know. Maybe PR wise it's not wise for him to do this, but I think what Disney needs to understand is that this is the kind of people that we need making Star Wars.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And they're going to get more of that because you know what? You know, can we say dumpster fire? If the thumbnail for their show has a dumpster fire going on, if you looked in the center.
Well, I look a little bit further too, and I think if John and Favreau has these kinds of people that he's bringing into the fold, then it can only mean better things for season 2, especially seeing as how, you know, maybe Coyle's right when he says that, you know, that they weren't quite ready for the response, maybe, you know, and so maybe
they only gave them 8 episodes.
Yeah, so maybe
what I'm saying. So like,
maybe that long breath before they go, as long as they've surrounded themselves with these kinds of people and they don't face infiltration by the story group, I think season 2 might be something truly amazing. Like, you know how they say a show can mature in its second season and really find its legs, you know? I don't know. Hopeful.
I think that they have a good setup. And you guys are fans of Clone Wars, right?
I am.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so supposedly we're getting the bridge between the last season and episode 3. I hope that there's a new hope.
Well, let's hope it turns out well. You know, there's still time for them to bring in actors to record new lines and muck it all up.
Yeah, to get good with the muckety muck, as they say.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's folks waiting with anticipated bated breath, and I think the bait is suckiness when it comes to Disney creating Star Wars. They don't get it.
Well, and that's what makes this one funny. Bear, throw this one up for a sec. This was about 4 hours after the premiere, Itchy. And I mean, I don't mean to hack on poor Scotty again here, but, you know, the Chad says, hashtag Rise of Skywalker is so damn bad that even Supreme Lord of the Shills, Scott Ubershow Mendelsohn, the man that spent 2 years mocking the Phantom and selling his bunghole for The Last Jedi, hated it. The Fandom Menace has won.
Okay, so Snoke is like stuck in a tube with like 3 other Snokes, and they're all rubbing their Johnson.
Well, yeah,
Ryan Johnsons.
Oh yeah, fucking right there. You caught that, did you?
Yeah.
See, now that was particularly clever. Luke Skywalker breaking the fourth wall, that wasn't clever at all, and I didn't like that.
What scene was it that he broke the fourth wall?
When he looks at the camera and smiles, my friend, to Ryan Johnson, like, I have my lightsaber back now. I mean, come on, that's just a little over the top. And basically, it's this: I shouldn't be thinking about Ryan Johnson when I'm sitting in a theater watching a Star Wars movie. Okay, seriously.
Yeah, it pulls you out of the moment.
It's just one more thing. I mean, yeah, it's a nice fuck you, I guess, but it's like you said, it's a way of just pulling you out of the illusion.
Keep popping out there, bud.
Well, you know, just trying to see if my pants fit. So. All right.
Testing the green room out.
Yeah. It looks great, man. So.
I heard Stephanie Janisek's really upset about the movie.
Really? See there. That's the dumpster fire we're talking about right there.
Wow.
Yep, that's it.
Yep. You know, that's that R2 dumpster that's been floating around the interwebs.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, I got to make use of that.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
I cartoonified it and put the bust of Jar Jar on it, and then we got a Lost in the Desert with no name.
It was glorious.
Yes.
Glorious.
I'm gonna have to write that down because I just thought that up.
And here's how bad of a dumpster fire, in fact, it is. Because here's one from Bailey, Her Satanic Majesty. Raylo's calling Ray a Mary Sue now. Oh, how the tables turn. And this will be like a red tweet. This is a real Raylo who just went and saw the movie and is very upset. F Raylo and F Ray. JJ really killed off his most popular characters for what? To add insult to injury, he did it by replacing everything. F Ray and that lame ass Mary Sue, and F all you guys. You all got what you wanted.
Oh boy.
Hold on,
All
I'm
you guys.
crying.
Who do you think she's talking about, fellas?
I'm crying.
Whee. Oh, that's just so funny.
Yeah.
Apparently, I clicked something that I shouldn't have, and I went bleep. Aw, another one.
Here's something that you might find funny. Somebody went to the premiere, posted this.
Can you zoom that in a little?
A little bit, yeah. Another one in the dust. There you go.
Dust. Alright, looks like we lost Immortal Coil.
The mouse got him.
Yep, the mouse got him.
Uh-oh.
I wanted Coil
told you guys I was coming after you.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted
let's
Coil to
see.
tell us what he thought about, Palpatine surviving being vaporized.
Yeah, that's a thing, man.
His Mary Poppinsing away from the, atomized Death Star. I mean, that's
Are you sure it
incredible
wasn't
stuff there.
Poof? You know, a Powerpuff Girls thing. You know, when he
Well,
went
it is
poof.
Disney. Maybe he's got some pixie dust or some fairy dust or so. What do they call it? Where's Tink?
Tink. Yeah, I got a Who's Your Daddy icon for that. But I've got so many photos in here, it's crazy. That, and then there's that.
Well, I think everything that Disney has built up with this new movie is they're just leading it to Star Wars the musical, and the big thing is going to be they can fly.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Thank you, Tommy. Thank you.
Yep, that's a good one, Tommy. And it's gonna be the musical Pigs Fly, Star Wars story.
Well, see, that's what Atomic Artist 415 said the morning after the release. Oh yeah, totally believable. Palpatine just poppins his way out of that massive explosion that clearly incinerated everything. Fuck this.
Now there we go. This is what Disney gave us right there.
There you go.
Darth Mickey has doomed us all with bad Star Wars movies.
Yeah, more or less.
More or less. So, if you were to have a favorite episode out of The Mandalorian, which one would it be?
I really like 8 for the action, and they plugged it all in because, well, I think they want everybody to anticipate the next season, and so they finished it off well. I didn't like the beginning of the episode, like we talked about earlier, but I think 8's my favorite so far. Was it 4? Or no, yeah, 4 was the one with the ATST, and that's my second favorite episode. So.
Well, Episode 5 was the young, the hothead bounty hunter that wanted to get in the guild. Wasn't that right?
Yeah, that's Cannavale or whatever his name is that we were referring to earlier. He's the little hothead guy, yeah.
It's a good thing I have somewhat decent notes.
So what is the overall consensus on the Mandalorian as a whole? Because I have not watched that either. I've been waiting until it's been completed. I want to hear from people I trust, their opinions about it before I consider giving it a chance. What did you?
It's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah.
I would say that for sure.
Okay.
If I were to give it a rating, I would probably give it 6.9.
Okay.
Maybe I would have gave it a 7 if Quill would have still been alive, but they killed a major character off.
Yeah.
And when I get it. What's his name that plays Quill? What is his name? Another 48 Hours guy?
Nick Nolte.
Nick Nolte. Basically, don't know what his schedule is like, but he was portraying a major character, and I don't think they should have got rid of the major character.
Even so, I think for him, though, at his age, that's a very respectable part for him to go out on, because it is it's a glorious death, first of all.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So, that character went through its own progression. And like you and I were talking about this, Bear, and Itchy might be interested. Like, there's people that consider the first 4 episodes to be the bulk of a previous work that was put together that they kind of tore apart to make the series.
Well,
and so
that.
If you're looking for
all the long episodes, we're convinced that basically it came from the Boba Fett movie.
That's what a lot of people have said, that it was reworked from the screenplay of the Boba Fett movie.
Yeah. And,
so, like, Bear and I were talking about the first 4 episodes in particular, and how because we're still not convinced about this television Star Wars stuff, and so to string 4 episodes together, cut out the crap like the replays and all that nonsense at the beginning of the episodes, and just give it a dramatic gap in between, a black screen for a gap, and string it together as if it's a pilot. And I think something ended up around 2 hours and 12 minutes or something. So it's a comfortable pilot. And there's a couple of folks that have taken that and done that so that you can watch it, because it has an introduction, has a body in the middle that has a few, crisis points and a nice climax, and that's got a resolution. So it's all complete, and you can kind of make up your mind, okay, do these people know what they're doing? And so that might be something that you might want to consider, Itchy, if you don't want to waste a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so pretty much all the episodes that are the longest ones, like the ones that are like 39 to 40 minutes long, you piece all those together, and the smaller episodes, if you watch those bigger ones, everything still makes sense.
Yeah.
And that the few of us are thinking that they pieced the bigger episodes, and they just filmed the smaller ones as filler.
How funny is it that a show with only 8 episodes still has filler?
Well, I think that's what Coyle meant earlier when he meant that they weren't sure how much rope they were going to give them.
Yeah.
And who was the Moff? Who was that, Moff Gideon?
Moff Gideon. I can't remember the actor's name, though. He does a marvelous job. He's an excellent
Yeah, he
villain.
played in Breaking Bad. Yeah, that guy plays a seriously demented bad guy. Insanely
You know what I noticed?
smart.
I watched that 8th episode, I think, like 6 times so far, just because it's a very, very interesting episode. And I gotta say that there's 2 scenes in particular just before the gun battle starts. And the stare that he uses as an actor. Remember you were saying about the long shots where they don't cut anything?
Right.
He's got a stare that this actor uses when he's intensely berating somebody. He didn't blink for almost 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Guy's scary, man.
Wow.
Yeah,
He's
it's
scary.
scary. Yeah, he makes an excellent villain.
I mean, the actor, he can portray dumping someone into a barrel of acid and not frickin' blink in Breaking Bad.
Not even blink. Not even a crinkle on his lip.
Not even nothing. Not even an emotion stirred. And then he gives this steel melting, steely gaze
Yeah.
to the other
He come
guy
cl-
and get to work.
he comes climbing out of a crash of a single fighter craft. He climbs out of the crash of it, where clearly the type of crash that it's been, your spleen at the very least and a few ribs are going to be broke. You know, he comes out, he's not wincing, nothing. He's furious. It's
Hey.
the strangest thing.
The bag of good words himself will be here soon. We're gonna have to work on that one.
Well, I know for myself, I will not watch The Mandalorian. I just won't do it. And I'll tell you what, my time is better spent constructing a better mousetrap.
Check out Mousetrap Mondays videos then if you like that sort of thing, Tommy.
Mousetrap Mondays.
Oh yes.
Or was
There's
it
some
Sunday?
YouTube videos that are-
Fun day.
Oh no, the guy does a YouTube videos where he builds all these historic mousetraps from 5, 6, 7, well, a couple thousand years ago. He builds Egyptian ones too and then tests them out. It's pretty cool.
So, Spork, what are you doing? Where are you at? You driving? You listening or what?
You better be making me that money.
Yeah, you know, don't forget that clause where I get a cut. Because I was there when the plan was devised. Or masterminded.
Well, you know how it works. The pimp gets a cut, so I get my cut first, and then you're the house. So just since he's working out of your house, you get your cut as well.
Yeah. Interesting. So yeah. So that last little bit where he's climbing out of how, a little something poked through the metal there. It sure did look like something very familiar that happened to be in the Clone Wars animation.
You mean the child getting pulled out of the bunker?
No. I'm talking about when Moff Gideon crashed.
Oh.
Wow, and I thought it was kind of interesting because you know how most TIE fighters, when they crash, usually nothing left of them? Well, apparently this one soft crash landed in sand. Because if it's not hard pumice on the planet, it's sand, I guess. And
whatever the case may be, he should be fucked up, and he looked really mad.
Oh man, he looked like he could chew nails and create stuff from it.
Yeah, he's mad.
Well, Bear,
But-
I mean, they went back to the drawing board with this, and they started looking over the old stuff. So they probably looked at the old 1977, 78.
Speaking
I've
of
probably seen that the X-wing wings just fell off. So
yeah.
it's possible they could be intact.
So yeah, the that little object that stuck out the side of the crashed. I just said it.
Tie.
Well, anyone notice that a black blade popped through the steel?
Yes.
Anybody, has that dark saber sound familiar? Well, this guy
It's definitely the
used-
dark saber.
Oh yeah, and basically, you know, I've read all about. Okay, back before the lightsaber was invented, they had vibroblades. Now, back then, they did have vibroblades that kind of glowed, but those were the rare ones. But most
Right, and I don't think it would
vibroblades-
make sense.
Yeah, right. And most vibroblades didn't really glow. The basic ones, they just vibrated, and they could pretty much freaking cut through anything almost. According to what I've read in the EU books, stuff like that had the majority of those in there.
Yeah, most of them were made from a metal called cortosis.
Yes. In
And it's an
cortosis,
older-
lightsabers can't really cut through cortosis.
And it's
Very,
like an
very difficult.
older- It's like I think, if I'm understanding it correctly, it's like an older tech. And you know how in the Star Wars universe everything seems to be recycled. They don't throw anything out. They just try to modify it or repair it
Right.
somehow. And so this is like a relic or a remnant from an earlier time that most people might not recognize. You know, like the Tusken Raiders me and Bear were talking earlier today. The weird thing about Tusken Raiders is that they don't use laser technology at all, blaster tech. They still use what's essentially railguns, like air-powered rifles that are shooting real projectiles, and that's why they're so dangerous, because most other people are using deflective technology against blasters.
Right.
Stormtrooper armor isn't made for bullets; it's made for lasers. Bullets is bad,
So can I just jump in real quick because I just got here? Just a couple quick things listening to you guys. Itchy, it is an honor to be on a stream with you.
Oh,
It really is, man. I love your stuff, man. I love your stuff. But I have to say, you guys all sound like old men. Let's get a little energy going here, boys. Now, Tommy, you are the worst pimp I've ever seen in my life. And the second thing is, Tommy, is that I've just realized you have a lot of phallic videos. All your videos are about lightsabers, big lightsabers. You got something you need to tell us?
Well, I'm trying to pimp you out, and since you are obviously not packing, I've got to put the bigger ones on the screen to show you the way.
Oh.
Hey, it's not the magic. It's not the, I don't know what they say, but you're right. Okay. No, so I've been listening to you guys for a little bit, and I got a couple things I got to say. The Mandalorian, Tommy, I love your stance on it, man. I love it. I love that you will not feed into the beast that is the mouse. On the other hand, I can't stand them, but I want to review it. I want my channel to grow. So I have to concede some ways. And my buddy online, good guy, real good guy, helps me with that. So I watched this series, and I think we're so starving for Star Wars. We're so starving for something without agenda politics, without the SJW crap, that crowd, without the woke narrative, that a show that I think is maybe a solid 5, and that's me being nice, out of 10. Everybody is hailing as the greatest thing since sliced bread. There was a lot of filler episodes. There was a lot of canon breaking. There was a lot of acting that it was like, I love Bill Burr, but Bill Burr to me was a guy from Boston in that galaxy far, far away. Horatio Sands in the first episode as that blue beast, the blue alien. He just was Horatio Sands from Saturday Night Live. Like, he
was just playing a character that he played before.
Exactly. He was playing himself.
That's world breaking.
Yes, exactly. Bear. And you know what it is? It wasn't until this episode, in the last half of the last episode, where I felt like I actually was in that world. Now, I've been watching The Witcher. The Witcher might not be the greatest show yet.
We've covered a little bit.
Okay, great. So it has awesome. I like how they went about doing this. Are we saying spoilers at all?
Yeah. We're
okay.
Spoilers.
So the separate timelines.
We do spoilers, so be warned.
Yeah, well, I already said it. I like how they do the separate timelines, but the thing about it, even though the CGI is not the best, worst dragons I've ever seen, the show itself makes me feel like I'm in that world. I feel like I'm part of that world when I watch it. It takes me to that place that the original Star Wars used to take me to. It took me out of my life and into a galaxy far, far away, or a different world, or like Game of Thrones, the first 4 seasons took me into that world. I didn't question it. I just went with it. And that's what we're missing with The Mandalorian.
Dragon Majesty says something that's makes a lot of sense. TIE fighters, they have inertial dampeners that protect pilot in the crash. So that's why Poe Dameron and what's his name survived that TIE fighter crash in The Force Awakens. Otherwise, they'd be dead.
Yeah, that was, okay. We'll say that's why he lived.
And basically, now we get back to that end scene where that guy uses the vibro blade to cut out of there. Now, if you remember correctly, according to the lore, Paz Vizsla was the clan leader, and he had that blade. And if you remember episode 2, Death Watch came to the rescue. That was Death Watch.
Yeah, it was.
They didn't say it was Death Watch, but that was basically Death Watch.
I felt that in my video too. I put that out today, but wasn't the last person to have it? Bo-Kanta had the last the dark saber.
Whoever was the leader of Clan Vizsla, he had it.
Well, it was a female. Bo-Kanta was the last. If you see Rebels season 3, she gets the dark saber, and
right,
she is the.
The head of Clan Vizsla was I don't know if it was Vaz, but it was the one guy that they were talking with. He had it, and then I believe it
Maul.
passed from him to her after they took it back from Maul.
Right. Okay. Was he blind?
Darth Maul?
No. The guy who gave it to Bo-Katan. Anyways, she had it last. So right there, if he was a part of this 1,000 night or whatever, that thing of tears,
right?
Then that's telling me we just learned off screen she was killed. Or if she wasn't killed, he somehow got that saber from her because she was the last one to have it that we know of in the story, in the canon. She's the last one we know to have it. So I kind of wonder if that's ever going to come up next season. In my video, I talked about it. I think the Mandalorian may know her or knew of her because he's been around now for quite a few years as a Mandalorian when he was taken in as a foundling. So I'm wondering if they'll bring that storyline in because they did have, we just said it was Death Watch. They did. It definitely was Death Watch uniforms. It was definitely their code, weaponry,
rocket
exactly.
Packs.
Yep. This last episode,
the gun belts connected up to the bottom of the rocket packs. That was all Death Watch.
So what he did was take that sword. What I see, this is my issue with the show like this. This episode was really good. I'm not going to lie. I really enjoyed it the first time I watched it. The second time is when I started seeing all the flaws. Couldn't stand the beginning. Couldn't stand how, they made the joke that stormtroopers can't shoot something 5 feet away. Even though, like, yes, we joke about that, us nerds out here, but in the galaxy, in that world, they are not supposed to be known as bad shots. They're supposed to be known as precise shooters.
Right.
They're very accurate, and they made, and Tiki Waititi made a joke of that. So what he just did was the episode before, these guys are on speeder bikes. They kill Quill at high speed with like 2 shots. And then now they can't even shoot something 5 feet away. It made a joke of what they did that last episode. Because I think the most important thing they did was kill Quill. I think it brought true stakes to this world. Just like Game of Thrones, killing Ned in the first season, I think that was a very important thing for them to do. Now, you now jump ahead in this episode, and these guys killed all those Mandalorians. So they can't shoot something 5 feet away, but they took out all the Mandalorians that were in that city. It's just, they can't make up their mind if they want to be funny, not funny, serious, not serious. Just like with Baby Yoda, do they want to kill him or do they want to catch him? 1 minute they want him, the next minute they're trying to firebomb him. Like that's my problem with this show. It doesn't keep a cohesive story going on. Sorry to talk so much, but I've been holding that in, guys.
So I agree with you for the beginning of that episode.
Well, hold on a minute. Basically, what you're saying, what could be happening is there could be a tug of war going on.
Yeah,
between higher ups in Disney and what they want to do, and they're probably fighting tooth and nail to get done what they want.
Well, we will see this in this next season because there have been overt messages sent through the media that John Favreau is the man now. He is allowed to do what he wants. They said, Bob Iger said he's the closest thing to a George Lucas we have seen. There's an article about Favreau yelling at Bob Iger because he called the yodeling Baby Yoda. Like they're making it obvious that he is going to be not like a Kevin Feige, but when it comes to this show, he will have total control. So let's see what really happens. I kind of feel like he didn't know what direction to go. He might have been trying to feed into the corporate people, maybe, or maybe he just doesn't know how to tell the story yet. So I'll give it another season to see what happens. But at the moment, it's not cohesive.
Hey, Itchy, what do you think?
Well, some of what he's saying here kind of harkens to some of the rumors going on that there's a civil war within Lucasfilm between Kennedy loyalists and other people. But what you're describing here is really kind of some of the reasons why this new Disney era is really no better and sometimes worse than the fan fiction that's out there.
Right.
And it doesn't feel like a genuine storyteller is telling a story. It just It feels like fan fiction.
And
but
I agree
essentially,
with you.
your overall opinion of The Mandalorian seems to be that it's like giving a dying man in a desert a glass of water.
Tommy, you piece of shit. Not you, Itchy. Tommy, when you know what my whole purpose now is to become a huge channel and still be your bitch. All right, so go on. No, Itchy, I agree with you. I believe that we're either seeing signs of this internal battle, the Kathleen Kennedys of the world trying to hold on to their power with this new group of guys like Dave Filoni, who should have took over Lucasfilms, but at the time wasn't the right guy to do it, I guess. Because Kathleen Kennedy pulled the wool over Lucas's eyes, just like Bob Iger did.
Yeah.
But I feel like after this season and after the acclaim they've gotten through critics and through fans, even though I think it's unjustified at the moment, but because of that, I think Favreau got that pull now. I think Bob Iger is just looking for something steady, something he can depend on, and that's going to be these two guys.
Well, hopefully it'll be a stepping stone to bigger and better things. But it from what you're describing, it sounds like, it's really not that good, and people are just gravitating towards it because out of hunger or thirst for good Star Wars, they're willing to take, a Hot Pocket over a real pizza at a restaurant.
I think it's a little bit better. Maybe it's like an Elio's, It's better than anything we've gotten in the new Lucas Disney merger. The thing that I just want people to recognize, and people call me a hater because I don't like the show as much as them. I do like, there are some really good episodes, but as a whole, I can't just throw it in there and say, oh, this is the greatest thing. It's just that we're thirsty. We are thirsty for good content. And they did give us something that didn't have an agenda. It just wanted to tell us a story, even if that story wasn't always so focused in the way it should have been. Maybe that's a better way of putting it.
Itchy, you might know something about this. Have you ever heard of class action lawsuits on IP damage, as in legacy?
I have not.
Legacy lawsuits. Well, I've heard of them, but you don't hear of them very often. They've happened before. And basically, Orville Nation's saying, rumor has it that Lucas is putting together a smaller Lucasfilm 2.0. That's interesting.
Really?
Wait a minute.
Well,
can he legally,
I have a
Tommy?
theory. I have a theory on something that's going to happen. Now, stop me if you guys think I'm wrong. But Iger looks to be pushing for. He's going to try to make a presidential run. That's what it sure seems like to me.
Yeah,
I think that's what's going to happen before he leaves Disney. He's going to right the ship with Star Wars to try to, pad his stats, if you will, with the common fan. I think that you're going to wind up seeing a change. And I think it's a very good possibility that what's going on right now with The Mandalorian is the lead into that change.
What do you think about him putting George Lucas in charge of Disney?
I think that's a technical impossibility.
It would be the ultimate FU to KK.
Even if he could, I don't think he would.
I don't know. After a lot of things
I
said
think
and done, I think he'd probably jump at it.
I think Kennedy's days are numbered.
Yeah, and rumor has it one in our community chat and part of our creator group, Nick has said that KK is going to give reasons of stepping down because she wants to spend more time with family. And Nick said it. He predicted. He's got an inside source. And remember, it was said on the late edition when he was on live with us, and I'm saying it. And remember, Nick said it first.
Well, Nick held on to that for a while.
Yes, he did.
And he had a source that he triple verified with, even though he already trusted that source, he made sure to hold on to that until he knew definite. And I think a lot of people have been speculating something like that, but he made it like it's almost a guarantee if, and it was only if though, I thought Rise of Skywalker didn't hit the numbers they wanted. And now they're already doing that spin on it. If she doesn't make it out of this, if she does, make it through this year, she's not going to get a new contract. She's just going to ride off into the sunset.
Yeah, man, I'm telling you, divisive. There's been nothing but division from that woman.
She's terrible. She's a liar.
When we were growing up, did we ever hear the words "the Force is girl power"? When we were growing up,
no, the Force was everything.
Yeah,
it was everybody. It flows through everything.
Yeah,
you know
she
what did Ben Kenobi
agenda
say?
Propaganda piece.
Yeah, Itchy, how do you feel about her? I know I already know, but I love hearing it.
Yeah, she is a liar. I mean, I've got some videos up on my YouTube channel where I essentially cut comments from her that directly conflict with one another. You know, she's saying whatever's politically convenient in the moment, and it's just really transparent. She doesn't know what she's doing from a creative standpoint. She may be a fine producer, but she has no idea what she's doing creatively. None.
Now, do you really think she's a fine producer, or did she fall into it?
Well, I say she may be a fine producer.
Yeah, okay.
I myself really have no way of knowing. She has a good track record. You know, she's been attached to a lot of high-profile films that are highly thought of, but that could be just the fact that she was once a secretary running for coffee and kind of fell into it.
Right.
Who knows? You know, I have no way of knowing. It could be either way. But creatively, she's completely empty. There's no question about that.
Well, I don't know how good her track record is because she didn't really finish that well at the horse races.
That was sexist. I don't see names. Who just popped in?
This is Alora, OG Star Wars. Hi, everyone.
Oh, OG, what's up?
Hi.
Laura, good evening.
Always nice to have you.
Thank you. Nice to be here with all you guys.
Nice.
Yeah, you remember Laura? She's been on the late edition a few times. And we've had some fun and debauchery on CJ's channel.
Mm-hmm.
And
That is a fun one.
Fun and debauchery, I mean laughing so hard that our stomachs hurt.
Yes. Always a good time. So you guys are talking about KK?
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
How did I know?
Now, Itchy, I don't know if you know OG over here, but she is our canon guide, our canon guru. So it's always nice to have her on because she could give us exact moments where they screw up the canon in Disney, which is pretty much every time, right?
Yeah, that's basically every single little hole that's been severing from its heart.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yep.
Yeah, Angelus Draven down below talks about how, if he would be okay with George being the head of Disney, then give the new trilogy a big middle finger and uncanonize the new movies. For myself, that would be the only thing that would bring me back as a consistent Star Wars fan purchasing merchandise and all that stuff, would be to completely decanonize everything that Disney's done up to this point, reinstate the EU, produce George's treatments for the sequel trilogy, and that's it. Outside of that, I'm pretty much done with it. I've been waiting to see what people had to say about The Mandalorian, but I have serious misgivings about it because I know that The Mandalorian touches base on how the origins of the First Order, which I absolutely do not care about. So already it's tainted with the crapola from the sequel trilogy, or the Disney trilogy, as people are calling it. So beyond that, I am pretty much almost done.
Yeah, I agree. The heart is basically torn out, and that is George Lucas. George is the heart. Whether we agree with some stuff about the prequels or not, it is a very coherent story, and it goes well with the OT. So, I agree. Bringing the heart back into Star Wars, basically giving the heart back, transplanting that heart back, probably would make a lot of fans return. However, because it's not going to happen anytime soon, I am having a lot of fans coming back to the Legends or EU, original EU, or even being introduced to it for the first time.
Yeah. That doesn't.
I know I am.
There's
I know
actually fans seeking it out.
Yeah, I'm one of them. I never truly got into the EU. I mean, I've read a little bit here and there, more of the comic book type stuff, but now I'm thinking about what series to start with. It's just, I want real Star Wars. I'm sick of this stuff.
I've actually found myself picking up old books that, I've read a few books, a number of books from the EU, but I was never into it completely. But now this has gotten me kind of picking up old books to check them out again. I see Chuck Wendick.
I know. I wanted to address that because I wanted to address what you guys posted here on Chuck Wendick, because I was going to share a quote from J.R.R. Tolkien, and this pops up, and it's perfect for this. Okay, so I'm going to read this, okay?
Yeah.
The problem with canon is that it demands viewing stories as a series of rigorously tested data points. It demands we view story pieces as historically true. Okay, so this is going to go to my point here, which is weird because in fiction and it's fiction, and B, even real ass history is full of wild, ragged or raged contradiction and retcons. Well, let me read what Tolkien, the quote from him, and this will basically make Chuck look like an ass and make him look like he's not knowing what he posted. Basically, he doesn't know his shit. What really happens is that the story maker proves a successful sub-creator. He makes a secondary world which your mind can enter inside it. What he relates is true. It accords with the laws of that world. You therefore believe it, while you are, as it were, inside. The moment disbelief arises, the spell is broken. The magic, or rather art, has failed. You are then out of the primary world again, looking at it a little I can't even talk right now. Abrogative secondary world from outside. So basically, he says when you create a lore, and for a person to believe it, you have to create a history behind it. So you can get into that story. So Chuck has no clue what he is talking about in that, because you have to create that believability. You have to have some kind of relations to the fiction and the fantasy that's being created in order to really accept it and get involved in it. Once that rule is broken, or that lore rule is broken, you are taken out of the story. Yeah.
Chuck's comment really kind of, it speaks to a laziness in the modern Star Wars writer. They don't want to have to bother with learning all of the canon in order to keep things right. They just want to go willy-nilly and do stuff however they wish. In fact, there was an article about the story group where they said that each writer gets to create his own truth. So even though they were complaining about the EU not being consistent, which really isn't entirely true. Here they are. Each writer gets to create his own canon, and it's one of the reasons why what little I've seen from the new Disney canon in the articles I've read, it's just comes across as just so vapid and empty, and I can't imagine wanting to purchase any of it.
Yeah, it's like you're taken out of the experience because everybody's applying their own story. And we also see that within the Disney trilogy is that every single director, basically between the two, put in, even JJ, he contradicts his own, which is hilarious. But between JJ and Ryan, they basically did their own thing, and they are not adhering to the world building that George created, and even what they created themselves. And they say, oh, well, Leia had training from Luke. Well, go read their EU and see Star Wars was unique in its own right as a franchise on creating such a vast history and lore. No, there wasn't really a parallel universe. They were all linked to the movies under one lore building rule. And that was George and what he set. And Bloodlines, in the novel Bloodlines by, what was that lady's name? Gray. Her last name was Gray. I forget her name.
Oh,
but anyway,
Claudia Gray.
Yeah, Claudia Gray. There we go. She basically has, and during the time frame when it came out, before they changed the timeline, it was 28 ABY. So basically, that's when the story was being told about Leia. And in that story, she refused training early on from Luke, and then didn't see Luke for the rest of the years until, and not even after she turned, or she had Ben go to be trained by her brother. So where is the training at then after that novel? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. I love what Mike always has good stuff to say about this too, because like one of the biggest things, and Mike and I agree with Mike on totally, is these people. Well, first is these people who say it's fiction, you know, it could be changed. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. Canon is made for a reason. These rules are made for a reason. So you could believe, okay, if you say that a dragon can fly in the sky and shoot missiles out of its ass, well, it better follow that rule then. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care what it is, just follow the rule. And Mike, I always like what you have to say about stuff like this.
And I, you know, of course, you and I agree on that. We've talked about that quite a bit. And that's the thing, as a writer, I have to help everybody. And Itchy will know what I'm talking about as well, obviously. That it's not just Star Wars. Like, these are the kinds of writers. And they're all products of their own environment. We keep talking about an echo chamber and all of this nonsense. It happens creatively in these spaces, too. I cannot understand as a creator who would have a safety net like the world that George built, that, as OG was saying, that regardless of where the explorations in the EU have gone, there's been a superstructure that they've all been bolted onto. And as a writer, I find that as a safety net and a comfort. These people come from a school of thought that find this to be an insult or a restriction or some kind of a barrier to their creativity instead of a tool to help guide them. And therefore, why are they involved in the material? But you see, that leads us right back in a circle to why are these people working on this kind of material, right?
Yeah, it's, you know, every piece of fiction should have its own internal set of rules that it operates by. And once you break that, everything falls apart, as you guys were mentioning earlier. But going back to Claudia Gray, you know, she's a really excellent example of the kind of people that they're hiring to write this material, people who don't really understand the franchise or the lore. She sent out a series of tweets that was talking about how Star Wars is all about the Force. It centers on the Force, and the Force isn't just some superpower. It matters how you treat people. Kindness matters. Decency matters. She says she's basically indicating that the Force is about kindness. So instead of being, you know, a kind of chi or energy field that people can wield, you know, however they wish, to her, it's like Christmas spirit or karma, you know, complete misunderstanding of what it is. So that's why a lot of this material is just garbage.
Yeah, the Force is an ability that is basically you're inherited by maybe genetics or just by the will of the Force, I guess you can say. But how you treat people is just the condition of who you are as a being. It's not a condition of the Force.
Right. The Force is it's an energy field, and anyone can use it. But to use it, you have to train in a martial art, just like some martial artists can use chi. It's a similar thing, but you have to train in it. You have to work at it, you know.
And yet not everybody is Force sensitive enough or even has it to even train. And then there also are, if you look into the legends, our original EU, we have Force societies like the Angting monks and all them that you have a whole different disposition about how to use the Force, and sometimes even like Force abilities that are not attainable to other people.
Yeah, there would be, different levels of talent and capability.
Yeah. And that
I'd like
goes to Force healing as well. So we go into the Force healing, where if you look into Legends, there's only a handful of people who have that ability, but now it's like, bam, you could just use it because.
Well,
kinda
there
like
was
to address-
what was it?
No, Tommy, real quick.
Battle meditation, right?
Yeah, battle meditation.
I like to just comic chat. I see what you're saying there, man, but I'm sorry, you're making no sense. Okay, because yes, Disney owns Star Wars and they can change the canon if they want, but that doesn't make sense. You could do whatever you want. I could change the rules of any world I live in, but once you do that, you make it you don't believe in it anymore.
Right.
The rule is if you make a rule that, only women can breathe underwater, and then in your 6th book, all of a sudden every guy can breathe underwater, and it changes the whole philosophy of your story. Well, then what are any of the other rules meaning? I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it changes the whole property, the whole heart of your show if you change the canon. It makes no sense.
Comic
I
chat
can
doesn't-
put a. I
doesn't
can hold on.
understand
I
the
can.
nature of escapism.
Hold
Right,
on a minute.
and that's
hold
what
on a
it
minute. Here's just a simple metaphor. Disney is 6 people on a panel, and they've muted everybody but themselves. Does that make sense?
Well,
So
I mean,
it would be like me. It would be like me having a show, and I muted all of you, and none of you can talk, and only I can talk. That's Disney.
Good way of saying it, man.
Yeah.
Well, here's the problem with that. When you're saying that they can do whatever they want, if you establish a set of rules and your story goes a certain way, it has to follow a pattern. If it doesn't follow that pattern and somebody changes it, you're taking away the immersive ability of that story to draw people in. Once you take that away, the franchise crumbles because there's nothing left. There's no foundation for it to stand on.
And we're not attacking you, man. I know you're not a bad dude. What I'm just saying is that you got to understand how important canon is to any franchise. That's like if carrying the One Ring, for 2.5 books, tells you that, brings out the worst part of you. And then all of a sudden it shoots out ice cream cones, it changes the whole thing. It makes it not believable anymore. But because Frodo's going through this journey, because he is following the hero's journey, and he's going through all these different, trials, you believe in what's going on. I could believe that this ring is causing him physical and mental pain. But if you all of a sudden up and somebody else takes it and they're like, oh, this is nothing. They're spinning it around and they're flipping it up and down and they're going invisible as much as they want. And all of a sudden the ring doesn't do what it used to do. Well, that's what kind of happened to the Jedi now. All of a sudden, all these troopers in Rise of Skywalker are Force sensitive kids. Like, it's hard to believe. Like, they don't know about the Jedi in A Force Awakens, but they know about Palpatine. Like, it just like him as a Sith Lord. Like, he's announcing he's a Sith Lord, even though they've always been in the shadows. Like, it makes no sense, man. There's just so many flaws.
Scott, actually, that can make sense in an aspect, because if you look at it throughout history, you got certain people that are evil and have caused a lot of problems, and people always remember who they are. I mean,
not a Sith Lord.
World War II. Look to World War II. Everybody knows who he is, and it will continue throughout time. Everybody will know his name, and it will be.
And we all know who Patton is too, though. We all know who Patton is. MacArthur is. Eisenhower is. We all know who those guys are. Like, what I'm saying is, I understand that, but he would be remembered as the Emperor, not a Sith Lord. Not like it
because
wasn't
that was the stuff that was in the shadows, and not everybody was privy to who he actually was.
And now we're able to clone Force sensitive people, and I know some of the maybe games like kind of had that.
Well, the EU had it. It put it to you this way: it either went well in the EU or it went completely bonkers crazy. Like,
the same thing
like
with
clones trying to kill you and stuff.
Right.
But
what about
some of
Darth Vader's clone, the one he made? What's that kid's name?
The Force Unleashed.
Yeah,
Star
Killer.
My favorite.
Thank you.
Star Killer.
Yeah, he was an awesome character. I thought they should. I still think they should do something with his character, being that they got something to work with.
I'm gonna add to this now. When it regarding to like people thinking that the Jedi are a myth and whatever in this new canon, people understood what the Force was and the Jedi was even when Luke was coming into fruition in the OT, and and then he became a Jedi. And everybody knew exactly what that was, and and that's why Leia was looking for Obi-Wan and stuff. And then we have Luke going out searching for Jedi archives and possibly, and this is in the new canon, and then possibly creating the new Jedi Order or the Jedi Order. And so I can't fathom people thinking he's a myth or even the Jedi are a myth when they even fought in the Clone Wars and all that. And also, too, we have Force sensitives that they were kidnapping and making into their Sith army or whatever. So that also takes away the disbelief out of it, or takes away the belief out of it, because they're searching for Force sensitive. If you know there's Force sensitive and you believe in the Force, and that's part of the lore inside this overall canon, then it refers back to the Jedi, which was a common Force society as well as the Sith.
Yeah. Well, also, go ahead, Chi.
It was kind of silly. The whole notion that the Jedi had become a myth, or the Jedi had become a myth, only 30 years after Return of the Jedi, 35. It was just kind of silly because there'd be plenty of people around with living memory of that stuff. It's just
itchy. It even gets worse. It even gets worse. That's my biggest hatred of the Mandalorian was this last episode where a Mandalorian didn't even know what a Jedi was. So they were.
They would know.
Well, yeah, but this was only 5 years after the Battle of Yemen.
Endor.
And thank you. I'm trying to think of what I was trying to say there. And they're trying to explain to one of the leaders of the Mandalorian, this Smith, I call her. They're explaining to her that this little baby Yoda has some type of power with its mind, and she's like, "Oh, we had an ancient enemy that was a sorcerers," and like talking about him like no one would know what Jedi were. It was only 5 years since Return of the Jedi.
Well, I know what angle. Hold on a minute. I know what angle that they're going with. They're not trying to lure us. They're trying to get the average watcher hooked that doesn't know anything. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to walk a line between what we know and what non-nerds on the other side don't know. So they're trying to paint the path down the middle. So there's stuff we recognize, but what they don't realize is we're going to question what they're doing. And we're questioning it now. And, the normies, they're not. They're like seeing that for the first time, and so they don't know any better. It's sauce for the goose for them. Yeah. And they don't know any better.
Yeah, well, I guess.
Here's how I could say that it could make sense in a way, where somebody might forget about the Jedi and they might remember the Sith. Now, you got to remember, Luke would have went out and he would have been telling people who Palpatine was after he defeated him. He would have been telling people. There's no way he wouldn't have been. And you look at our news media today. And, you know what? Even better than that, when you go to rate a company, you're going to more than likely go and rate a company and go on some site and complain about them more often you will giving them compliments for something they did right. And this is just how people are. They focus on the negative first.
But Tommy, you got to remember, in Disney's own canon now, in The Last Jedi, Luke started to train new Jedi. There was now a Jedi temple. Luke made it known that he was finding new Force-sensitive people. This was years after Return of the Jedi. So now you're telling me, because Ben is only maybe in his mid-20s in this movie, like he's probably even younger than that, even though the actor's a little bit older. So you're telling me no one would know of the Jedi that the guy who saved the Republic, you know what I mean? Like destroyed the Emperor. Maybe they would have known about the Sith, but they definitely would have known about the Jedi.
And I will add to that, Mon Mothma was still alive during that time. She basically grew up knowing the Jedi Order and working with them, exclusively Kenobi.
Right.
Many in the Rebel Alliance would have,
Exactly.
even during the time of the Empire, it would have been pretty much common knowledge that the reason the Empire came about was by doing away with the Jedi. So that would have been known.
Yeah, and I don't believe that they would go with amnesia all of a sudden. Bam!
Hey,
Everybody doesn't know anything.
Well, I would like to point one thing out that everybody did and everyone said.
Yeah.
Whether they knew about Jedi or not, they always said, "May the Force be with you."
Mm-hmm.
That is
They
true.
always said
And
that.
it's more than likely, it's more than
And,
likely somebody's going to remember something bad than something good. I mean,
No, that makes
that's
sense,
just,
Tommy.
That's just human nature.
But
But the bad
everybody
people
wished each
still
other
didn't
when
say
they
that.
left. It was a greeting, and it was like saying goodbye to each other. May the Force be with you. Everybody said that,
They were saying it in the new one.
right?
You know,
And
but
it's like
Yeah.
it's like partial amnesia.
I
I'd like
I
to
don't know.
welcome. Who's your dad? Hey, how you doing? Who's your dad?
Yeah, what's up, brother?
I take it you're from Indiana. Welcome.
It's nice to see Script Doctor too, man. I got to be on Midnight's Edge After Dark for just a little bit with him, and he's a really knowledgeable dude.
Well, all the leaks to everybody here, links is in the info below. And Thomas is probably laying those links down in the chat for you guys. Tommy.
Best pimp around.
He's supposed to be taking a break tonight, but whatever. Nobody can stop him.
He can't help it, dude. He's awesome.
He's a madman with a wrench.
There's a few wrenches out there that are the best. Chris Persia, Christy, Tommy, Mark. I always say Mark's last name wrong. Listerth.
Well, I just say we call him Tommy the Octopod. That's what I say.
There we go.
Yeah. We could keep talking about this. I really love to hear about what people feel about The Witcher, if anybody's seen it.
I began it last night, 1 and 2.
Okay, so that's perfect. How do you like it after that point?
So far, at first, I was kind of confused about going back and forth between the past and present with The Witcher.
Oh, you
And
caught that?
Yeah, I caught that. Like, I had to rewind it one time, just like, okay, is this past and is this present? Because at first I was like, what the hell? What did I just watch?
You literally are one of the only people I know that caught it.
Mhm.
We had a
before, like,
conversation
episode
before we went
4.
live.
Yeah, before episode 4. I caught it like episode 3. And then when I rewatched episode 1, I caught like the 2 times you realize they're talking past and present. And I didn't even realize, they're talking about the Queen's battle. And and then they jump to where the Witcher is, and she's talking about she just won that battle. I was like, holy shit. I thought that was a great.
You have to be paying attention because I started watching and I'm like, what? So I went back and rewatched the first episode. I'm like, okay, they're jumping around.
Yeah.
Going backwards and forwards. And they don't, and we talked about this in the beginning of the show. They jump from the future back to the past, back and forth. And they do no lens changes. They do no visual cues.
Right.
There's no labeling.
Very good way of putting it.
And so there's really no way to tell other than just watching what's going on and seeing the change in characters. And because, most shows, they'll change the view of the camera. They'll change the visual to where the visual is altered just a little. Some parts are out of focus while some are in. This doesn't do that.
Right.
And you have to be paying attention to it, no distractions, and watch from beginning to end. And then you'll have to watch a few times because there's going to be stuff that you miss.
And it's beautiful how it melds into that very first scene with the young Princess Ciri in the street to where the Witcher is actually the one watching her when she looked. Like, I loved how they did that from episode 1 and finished it off in episode 8. I think this is one of the first shows in a really long time. Usually it's like the first viewing, I really like a show. And then when I watch it again, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, there's some issues. And by the third time, I'm like, oh, this show sucks. And I'm not saying The Mandalorian sucks, but I pick up on all the mistakes. Now with The Witcher has gotten better every viewing. The maestro guy or the bard is hilarious. Yennefer, the girl who plays Yennefer, is unbelievable. I love her. And they're not afraid to kill like sensitive type of, I don't want to even say who they killed in one episode, but when Yennefer's jumping through portals trying to save the companion she's with, and what happens to one of the companions, like they're not afraid to kill off, sensitive things that cause people like, wow, that hurts. Like I was actually physically a couple times like, wow, that was painful. It's awesome. It's an awesome show.
Yeah,
Hey,
I like to pay.
Hold on a minute. I'd like to take a moment. Hey, Hoosier, I'm from Gary, Indiana originally, and I had a whole bunch of friends all over Lake Station. So welcome to the show, fellow Hoosier.
Hello, Hoosier. Okay, so what I was getting at is that I like to really look at the story and how they're developing it and the content and how coherent it is within its own self, and that's why that's why I really relate back to Star Wars when I do compare and contrast between both of the lores, the original and the new lore. And so that's how I caught that with The Witcher in the first within the first episode. I'm like, oh, we're going back and forth from from past and present here. This is going to be interesting to see how they develop this and how the story goes along. I plan on watching episode 3 tonight. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. The only thing I have against it is they need to give it a better budget. The CGI, there's a couple parts where some of the monsters, it's not believable at all. You're just like, oh, that's horrible CGI. But the story saves it. You know what I mean? The story makes it. Henry Cavill plays a great brooding. I mean, he was a brooding Superman, so he plays that great brooding, but he's very sarcastic in this show. He's very, he's very flawed. I love it. His
character is very likable just because of all the flaws.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, story.
And that's what we don't get in Disney
I'm
trilogy.
From Gary, originally.
I don't know, man.
Rough and tumble place.
That show put me to sleep.
Yeah, man, you gotta give it another chance.
Hey, man, it's The Witcher. It's not gonna be for everybody because basically, if you love fantasy books, if you love David Eddings, if you love Terry Brooks, if you love Lord of the Rings, you're gonna like this because you're gonna literally feel like you just stepped into a book. Because
that's what I love about it.
Yeah, the first 2 episodes, it's like I was hooked. It's like normally a TV show doesn't feel like you just open. Now, let me explain when I say open a book. When I read, I'm in the story. It's like turning the TV on for me.
Same here.
I see all of it visually.
Yeah, I do.
And that's how I see it. And an old friend of mine back from the old neighborhood once asked me, what do you get from that? Scratching his head. And I'm like, so I explained to him. I go, for me, when I pick up the book, it's the same thing you get when you watch your favorite TV show or watch your favorite movie. The only difference is I'm the hero. I'm in the story.
And you're the director.
Right.
That's right.
Yes, I think that's the best way of putting it, Itchy.
Yeah.
I become the director. I'm the casting agent. I do it all. And I love that. Like Game of Thrones to me is probably one of I'm sorry to my Tolkien. I love Tolkien, but Game of Thrones, and if he finishes it strong, is probably going to go down as the greatest series of books. It's not a trilogy, but it's supposed to be 7 books long. And those books have just sucked me into a world that when the show started was hard for me to not see the people I created in my mind. That's how visual he is as a writer, how he explains eye color and the tunic the guy wears and the food, how it looks, how it tastes. I love stuff like that. And when a show can do it, it really makes me happy. And that's what this show did. It brought me into the world. I didn't feel like I was watching some guy from Boston doing it. You know what I mean?
All right.
Itchy, have you watched it? Oh,
I have not watched The Witcher.
No.
Or Game of Thrones.
All right.
Game of Thrones.
All right, we
is the best.
We have a old friend of mine in the chat.
Okay.
And I'm gonna tell a story. It's a true story. All right, and he'll remember this. Years ago, back when I lived in Gary, John was on his way over. Now, as you enter into the neighborhood, there's telephone poles and there's the apartment sign right there. It's a divided road. And as he was pulling through there was a power line down. Well, I don't know if you know this, but I have astral projection dreams. I can be like everywhere. And I was wandering around my neighborhood. I saw the power line down. He was pulling onto the street, trying to carefully driving away from it. And he goes to knock on the door, and I open the door. And he's like, "How the hell did you know I was here?" It's like, "I dreamt it. I watched you pulled in the neighborhood." So that's a true story, folks.
I love your stories, man.
Yep.
I love your stories.
Yep. Isn't that right, Hoosier?
Now, Itchy, let me ask you a question. Is there a reason you don't watch? Is it the style, or is it just you haven't gotten around?
I'll be perfectly honest with you. I have not watched very much modern entertainment post 2010.
Okay.
I've seen Black Sails, which I absolutely loved.
That was pretty cool, yeah.
But the modern entertainment, there's so much of it has a lot of that propaganda, political messaging, all that stuff in it that it just turns me off. So I've been using it as an opportunity to check out older stuff that I missed or didn't have time for. So yeah, Black Sails is probably the most recent modern thing I've actually sat down and watched.
Let me tell you this then. If you like to read the A World of Ice and Fire, or excuse me, A Song of Ice and Fire series, the Game of Thrones series. Give that an opportunity because the show was great until they got past his stuff.
Okay.
And then it became kind of woke. It got an agenda. All the women became super powerful. All the guys sucked and got dumb. But the books are medieval brutal with a hint of fantasy. High fantasy. That's the difference between this and Witcher. Witcher is fantasy in your face. Game of Thrones is there's a little bit of fantasy around you, but it's mostly about political drama, about, wars and love and sex and violence. And it's great. It's great.
Well, maybe I'll check it out someday.
Yeah.
I keep hoping that they'll someday produce an Elric of Melniboné. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Series from Michael Moorcock's books. Hopefully that'll come someday and it'll be enjoyable.
I heard they're doing a Wheel of Time. Someone told me they're doing a Wheel of Time. Was that Robert Jordan?
Yeah, I hope not.
Yeah. I heard something about that. They're doing the Lord of the Rings. Well, not Lord of the Rings, but their second age of that world. They're doing that on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, man. The state of stories right now in Hollywood right now, I hope they're going to do it justice because I ain't got much hope for it. I mean, honest.
Yeah, I think Irish is agreeing with me on the Wheel of Time series. I started that one time years ago and just never finished the first book, and I think I'm going to get back into it because I thought it was a very cool premise.
It's yeah.
But it's another author that never got to finish his books, and that bothers me about George.
Brandon finished that up.
Brandon I heard Sanderson. He did a good job.
Yeah, he did good. But
it's not
he had Robert Jordan's family's blessing and guidance.
Okay.
They were involved every step of the way. Robert Jordan's wife was involved every step of the way.
That makes it better.
It was the most respectful way to finish a series. Granted, was it exactly what we were going to get? Probably not. But it was as close to a finish that we could get with that. Unless they actually come out and publish all Jordan's notes about what he was going to do with it,
right?
Because he had all the notes.
I didn't know that.
And if they're going to turn it into a movie, they need to do it justice because Robert Jordan built a world that was completely different, and Robert Jordan, that world was woman centric.
Oh, definitely.
But you see, there was a breaking. Because there was a breaking in that world, and you had both men and women,
right? And
basically, the men's side got tainted, and men would go mad from channeling,
right? If they used too much,
right? And the Dragon Reborn was a premise. I mean, it was I guess you could say it was a similar story to kind how the Chosen One was in Star Wars. There was a lot of stories that had that hero that ultimately has everything riding on his back.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I also
was put-
started. I don't know. Have you watched Dark Material or his Dark Material on HBO? It's based on like that Golden Compass type book series. They made a movie that was horrible, but the series has the girl. Yeah, the series has the girl from Logan who played I forget her name in it, but she's like the mutant Logan, like the one that they turned into a mutant like him. So it's a very cool show from what I've seen so far. I'll let you know if it gets woke. It's not like Watchmen. That was the worst. I will never ever watch it again.
I've been listening to what everyone's been saying about Watchmen. That's Gary #1. He's been saying it's not really that great, and it seems to be the general consensus.
Yeah,
and basically what I heard said about the movie, if you never actually read the graphic novels, that you might like the movie, and so I watched the movie, and I've never really read. I've read clips and pieces.
What, Watchmen?
Yes.
Oh, the movie's fine. The movie's fine. They just changed the ending.
There's people that didn't like it though.
Yeah, I get that because they changed the ending and stuff, but it was fine. It's the show that sucks. But I have a question. I'm keep jumping around, but I just realized all 5 of you pretty much are EU people, aren't you?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So what should be the next trilogy? What should have been the trilogy?
Do you want me to expand on that first, since I probably know the consensus of this?
Please do.
Already? All right. So based upon what George wanted to do with the wills and where we last left off in the EU, which is Crucible, I have also shared this on one of my videos on my channel, is that developing a story from what George was kind of giving us hints and basically what he possibly gave to Disney Lucasfilm is, the wills and also to expanding the story on the grandchildren of Vader now, is that I believe it should have happened after Crucible when Luke, Leia, and Han are retiring, because we get them retiring after Crucible, and the proverbial lightsabers being handed down to the next generation, which be Jaina, Solo, and Ben Skywalker. And then we have Jagged Fell. So we have the 3 established, which is customary in Star Wars. We have 3 protagonists. And so having them expand and having Jaina and Ben and the New Jedi Order continuing and going on into Legacy, where we have the Fel Empire and the Skywalker family still being in the canon or in the EU, is that with that, the story should have been like Luke looking for the dagger or a way to imprison or kill Abeloth, as we've seen in Fate of the Jedi going on into Crucible. And then so they're off on their own mission, but slowly retiring. And he also sent out other Jedi in that similar mission, while we see, the adventures of Jaina, Ben Skywalker, and Fel going on into the Legacy era of comics.
And would that be Mara Jade also involved in that?
Mara Jade's already dead. She
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so she was killed in Legacy of the Force, called Sacrifice, novel 5.
God, we got to talk. We got to talk more often. I love listening to you talk about this stuff. It's so awesome.
Thank you.
Maybe she can
now let me ask you another
for us. Maybe she can elaborate a little more on us, because my choice would be there's got to be a way to introduce a new Luke Skywalker at a certain point, whether anybody likes it or not, and it's certainly not something that we want to talk about. But the Mara Jade epic, which is an epic all on its own, her story, starting from the very beginning, and obviously I'd like OG to speak a little more on that, but that in itself is an epic, and the more elaborate ending parts to that saga in itself are good ways to introduce a new Luke that allows a transition between actors, because Mark Hamill won't even want to be doing any of this as far as he's been speaking publicly.
Yeah. And why I chose that area of time frame is that we have Luke, Leia, and Han at the same age as the actors and actresses. And then the spin-off can be, since we're looking at like possible spin-offs from that era and stuff, is doing a spin-off series about when, and we can who is it, Sebastian Stan is the one that really looks like Luke as well. Then we could bring him in to do a spin-off on like Thrawn trilogy.
Damn, you are right. He does look like Luke from what I've seen of artistic like renderings of him.
Mm-hmm.
That's that would be a good pick. And he's a talented guy. I would give him an opportunity.
And then that Anthony guy who looks like Han.
Oh, who did the young Indiana Jones stuff and the one?
Yes.
Yeah, the young Indiana. Oh my God, he looked just
Isn't
like
he amazing?
him.
Is amazing.
Oh,
Anthony.
why
Ingruber.
didn't they choose? Is that his name?
Mhm.
Anthony, what is it?
Anthony Ingruber.
Okay, because I was going to totally say something else. That's why I just said Anthony.
He is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we got third Ehrenreich because he was somebody's girlfriend.
Oh God.
But
Is that
yeah,
true?
I think as far as a sequel trilogy, I think you're definitely hit the nail on the head. It should have been George Lucas's treatments about the Wills. I've got an entire article on my blog where I've essentially collected all of the bits and pieces that have been reported, trying to piece together what this might have been. And it's vastly more interesting than what we got. One of the more interesting things is the notion of Darth Talon as a primary villain, which would have been spectacular. And one of the primary things that disappointed me about the sequel trilogy or the Disney trilogy is the fact that they brought back the Empire. It was such a hackish choice. Even after all of the arguments as to why the Empire would come back again, it's still just boring. I really wanted to see what was going to happen after the Empire, what would happen in the power vacuum that the Empire leaves behind. A new scenario, something different, not the same crap, redone over again. It's just really, really boring. And so in a sequel trilogy, that's what I would like to see, is moving on beyond the Empire and establishing a new scenario. Because the films always had kind of two parallel stories. For lack of a better term, I call them the macro story and the micro story. The macro story kind of deals with the overarching political nature of the galaxy, who's in charge, and then the micro story deals with the characters on a personal level. And the macro story was just completely lacking in this. It was very vague, just kind of messy. None of it made sense. Who is the First Order? Why are they in charge? Is there a new republic? What's going on? It was just a mess.
Yeah, I agree. And having it 30 years later, and the Emperor surviving an implosion. So basically the star exploded inside out. And I'm going to point this out. Someone said I was nitpicking, but I like to go and look at every single detail, see if it makes sense to the story, because George paid attention to what he was doing. Disney's not. And when you look at the tower for the throne room, it's not inside the Death Star. So how did that survive? And why did they make it look like it was inside the Death Star when it wasn't?
Yeah, it's just
my God.
Awful ideas.
God, I missed that.
Awful ideas from top to bottom. One of the initial criticisms that people made when they first firebombed the EU was that, well, it sucked because they brought the Emperor back anyways. That was just terrible. It was just awful. It was bad storytelling. And now here they are bringing the Emperor back.
Yeah, and I will expand on that a little bit more. So as I said, 30 years later, we have the Emperor here on some kind of life support, embodying the Sith, which is not necessarily a Star Wars lore, although we did have Darth Nihilus who consumed Force users to maintain his life. So that made a little bit more sense because he's consuming for his own power. But then they're saying that Sidious embodied the Sith and that they're there to help him, basically, is what I translated that as. So that does away with the Chosen One story. But when we get the Emperor coming back through his Force essence into a clone, it's 10 years later? or something like that. So it makes a little bit more sense in the fact that it's still close to the end, but it's not his body. He had a contingency plan, yes. And then it goes into Darth Plagueis era where they are trying to find immortality.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, and another level of it, which kind of goes along with the whole political situation of the galaxy and wanting to see something after the Empire, is the art design. You know, I don't want to see more TIE fighters and X-Wings and Star Destroyers. I want to see something new, which is one of the criticisms Lucas had about the Force.
Yep. Yeah, one of his biggest criticisms.
Yeah, I want to see new designs. I want to see, you know, something, whereas, you know, the original trilogy was kind of based on a World War II era design motif, which they call diesel punk these days. You know, I would like to have seen it progress to perhaps a Vietnam era, like the Aliens movies used, or a Cold War era, you know, more in an 80s style military version. But instead we just got the same old crap. They slap some red paint on it and away they go.
Yeah, and then when you look into the EU, like when you have the Chiss and all them come in, their TIE fighters basically, you know, progressed, and we also have the Chiss claw crafts, I guess, that are very similar, are almost similar to the TIE fighters, but basically we see a progression in the technology in itself. Even the X-Wings fighter turned into stealth X-Wings. And they improved on the technology. It's part of the lore. It's part of the believability that this is a history in its own fantasy, and we see progression and everything going along. Nothing stays the same.
Right.
So
yeah, FlexCore says, sorry, that feedback chirp is too much for me. Well, that chirp is probably someone's smoke detector saying,
that's what I kept thinking.
It's mine. I'm in my room. Because right now I have family here and they're cooking and stuff. So either you'd hear cooking or chirping. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to turn my stuff off when I'm not talking.
Don't worry about it. It's fine.
You're fine.
It's fine. I thought the same thing. I'm like, is it my smoke detector? I was like, because sometimes that means the battery's low. I was like, what's going on?
It's all in your heads, everybody.
Yeah,
it's in your heads.
Well, I have a lot of things in my head. Now, I agree with you. I love hearing what you guys talk about because it makes so much more sense than what Disney did. You know, and OG, don't listen to any of that bullshit because I am the biggest nitpicker too. Like, I can't get past the idea that the Emperor still is alive. And then people are like, well, maybe he's a clone. Why would he make, even though Snoke, it looks beat up, why would he make that body so much more, I don't know, able to move around and not be hooked up to devices than his own? You know, like he survived an explosion. He survived outer space. He must have Mary Poppins it. And then he survived re-entry into an atmosphere, landing into the water. And the tower part, I didn't even think about that. I forgot he wasn't even in the Death Star. So that makes so much sense. But like, I don't understand. Like, they just were like, screw it. We don't even care about the people who, you know, believe in Star Wars and care about Star Wars. We just want, like a family member said tonight, they loved the movie because it's a popcorn movie for them. It's something that they could just watch and just go with the story. Because there's, you know, it's 211. Everything's bigger. We have 100 freaking, you know, battle destroyers, even though that would take, you know, millions of people to man it and decades to build and resources that a guy hooked up to a freaking life support somehow did. Like, all the things just did not make sense.
No, let's not even mention all the private contractors that had to work on that stuff.
He killed them all. He killed them all. That's the only way you can think about it. Like, literally, how did that happen? You know, like no one could find this planet except for the people that he hired, all the people that are going to man the ships. But yet there's only 2 wayfinders to find Exegol. You know, like, it makes no sense. It makes no sense.
All right. So Exegol being in the unknown territories, what's established in Legends is that hardly anybody went in there because the traveling into that area was so risky.
Dangerous. Yeah, it's like they
And
were going through
dangerous.
a nexus or something like that. I couldn't tell what he was trying
Yeah,
to do.
depending on, there was no hyperlanes established.
Okay.
It wasn't well explored because, so as you look in the history of Star Wars, basically before hyperdrive was, or even when hyperdrive was invented, people still had to travel in carbonated ships for a long period of time. And then hyperdrive came, and then they started establishing hyperlanes, and so then it started expanding. So by the time we see, the OT, PT, and the EU coming out, basically the unknown regions basically still wasn't vastly explored. That's why we don't see the chiss as we do until after the fact. Where, they were in the PT when Thrawn came about. But the thing is like, okay, so am I to believe that they sent a spy and they found Exegol, or what? Because are they still trying to go long and cherry pick from legends? And so what they do with that is basically they take it and they turn everything on its head to for whatever reason, and maybe to make it their own and distinctively their own. And so Exegol is now a world that's in the unknown regions. And so how did this come about? What, just make me believe it, because I don't.
Exactly.
Well, they retconned the Chiss in the Star Wars: The Old Republic game, in a sense. I mean, I know that most of the games are not considered canon, but in that game, they actually had Chiss in that game.
Yeah. So now we are told that they're barely exploring and the unknown regions, that they didn't know nothing about it, even though like in the EU, there are some things that are known, but it was really risky, like even in Outbound Flight.
Right. And Comment Chat says something that we've all brought up too, is the holocrons. Why are they calling them wayfinders? Is it because they don't want to pay George for that word? Like, it makes no sense. They change everything 25%. I believe that whole 25% thing, that like, if it's something Lucas created, they need to get rid of. And
I don't recall Wayfinder being used.
I know holocron was
in the EU. I do remember battle spheres that the Sith made, and there was ones even made for the light side of the Force that were battle spheres, where they could go into a battle meditation and use that sphere. The Sith made them, and I believe the old Jedi made them. But the Sith
there was a Sith dagger though. There, am I correct?
Yeah, that was the son of Mortis. Isn't that storyline?
But
and
that thing wasn't called the Wayfinder, though.
Dagger. No, the Wayfinder is more like a holocron, a Sith holocron. I mean, that's what they store things, right?
Yeah, and that's what they were trying to look for towards the end of Legacy of the Force, to do away with Abeloth. And so that's why Luke sent out Jedi to find that dagger, or a way to trap her back into the Maw cluster.
And off topic real quick, but on topic, the thing about Luke that killed me again, because they destroyed him twice, in The Last Jedi, he pretends like he doesn't pretend. He doesn't know who Rey is. But in this movie, they say he knew Rey was a Palpatine the whole time. So they are so ass backwards in this movie. I don't know if we could sit here and actually explain anything away.
I think, part of the problem they had was that a lot of what we're talking about is somewhat complex, and they really wanted to widen their audience or broaden their audience. They felt that this sort of stuff was a bit too niche to be able to do that, so they firebombed it, and they had to dumb it down in order to try to appeal to a wider audience. I mean, the movies are dumb. They're
garbage itchy.
Dumb.
They're such garbage itchy.
So I think that's what they were trying to do.
It's so it didn't work, I guess.
It seems like they were trying to appeal to the Twilight crowd with the Rey and Kylo. And maybe they did to some extent, but they're not going to be sticking around any more than the Twilight crowd stuck around with Twilight,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very
And
good way
then
of putting
in
it.
the EU, we had Luke in Dark Empire finding out about the Emperor's return. So he wants to go in there and infiltrate to get rid of him. But then we have him in this that has no idea or clue what the hell is going on.
Right. Right. But yet, so he has no clue what's going on, but yet he was going to an island to just die. But then in the next movie, he actually was on a mission to find these wavefinders with Lando, who just decided to stay in the same planet for 30 years. Like it made no sense. They changed it so dramatically from like, at least with Ryan, I freaking hate Rian Johnson. Don't get me wrong, but at least he attempted something and he stuck to what he created. They just went, I don't even know where they thought they were going. They just threw a bunch of shit together and went with it, and it made no sense.
And that goes back to the Tolkien quote that I shared when I first came on board, is that they broke the lore. They took us out of the believability of the lore behind Star Wars.
Sad. So sad.
And so we have Luke, like I said, in the EU. And then what was the icing on the cake with Dark Empire? So is that we had the Skywalker twins defeating and completing their dad's legacy as a Skywalker, defeating and doing away with the alchemy essence of dark alchemy essence of Palpatine.
Explain that to me, because I've heard of this before, but I didn't know, because people try to use this about this movie, Rise of Skywalker, that actual thing. They try to use that as their excuse for it. What is the difference?
Okay, so the difference is that they are Skywalkers.
Well, that's true.
Simple.
But I'm talking about with Palpatine being
with Palpatine. Okay, so those who are trying to say that, oh well, they're trying to do the same thing. We don't have Plagueis in even though it says he's canon because he's referred to in the prequel trilogy. In the Phantom Menace, but we don't have his story like we do in Legends. So in Legends, basically, Plagueis was trying to find a way to be immortal. And so that's from there that, basically we see Palpatine seduce Anakin with that theory to try to save Padme. And so when we get into Dark Empire, and we see Sidious coming back, it's his Force essence. So basically he either learned something along the way or he basically knew how to do Force transfer or Force essence transfer, which is a dark side ability, into another clone. And then he also later tried to possess Anakin solo because of his strength in the Force. And so we have basically Palpatine surviving the Death Star, which is not believable, and that has nothing to do with alchemy.
Okay. Because I know that like a Jedi, one of the beautiful things about the Jedi and the Sith are the Sith want all power, and like take Sidious. His biggest thing is he doesn't want to die. He wanted to live forever. He wanted to rule forever. At least from what I've seen. And on the flip side, the Jedi just want to be one with the Force, find peace with the Force, learn meditation the hard way going through the Force. And in death, a Sith, unless he, and I don't know what they call it, but they possess something, they die, while a Force ghost could be made from a Jedi. Like a Jedi could actually learn to become a Force ghost and live forever as themselves within the Force and not become exactly one with the Force, where they lose their self.
Yeah.
So,
and what I'm hearing you get at with this is that, okay, so the Sith the Sith want power, the ultimate power. They want to be embodied in power, and that's greed. And so they do have, like, Sith can be ghosts and possess like certain areas where they died at and stuff. So like when we get into Thrawn trilogy, when Leia passes through the exact place where the Death Star exploded there in indoor area space, that's where she overcomes and feels his presence there. So basically his presence has stained that area of space by Endor.
Yep.
Okay.
I remember that.
And so when we get Force Ghost, not everybody has the ability to become a Force Ghost, and you have to train. And so the belief of the Force Ghosts in Rise of Skywalker, basically now everybody can be it, because we have Mace, who wasn't around when they were training to be Force Ghosts, and we also have other Jedi too. For example, even Ahsoka now she may now be dead.
Right. But they make it so now any Jedi can be a Force Ghost almost, at least vocally, not materially, but like you got someone like who would have trained Leia, who would have trained these people. Like it's something that I always screw up his name. Liam Neeson, Jin, say his name, please. Jin Kwan. Qui-Gon Jin. I always frick his name up.
Qui-Gon, yeah.
He's the first one that we know of that comes back as a Force Ghost, correct?
Mm-hmm. And so they're breaking their own movie lore now, because we've seen Revenge of the Sith, where he basically talks with Yoda. See, he didn't get full training, or either he wasn't fully powerful enough to become a Force Ghost, but he comes back because he learns from another Force society on how to do that. And so he teaches Yoda. In turn, Yoda tells Obi-Wan, and then Obi-Wan goes into exile with Luke, basically. And so his mission is still to remain as a Jedi and train to become a Force Ghost, and then also keep in line with his Jedi teaching, so that he can teach and help Luke become a Jedi himself.
And they just throw that hard work and everything about that canon away and say, hey, let's see how many voices we can cram in this 1 minute dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great movie.
Yeah, and with Disney canon, basically anybody can do anything now with the original lore under George's care and his rules and stuff. And yes, he did approve things, especially when it came to his main movie characters. Anything that evolved around them had to be approved, and he also helped develop the stories, whether how little or big it was. And so not every Jedi possessed the same ability to do the same things. Everybody had their own strengths and weaknesses.
Right. And that's definitely obvious between even just, Obi-Wan. It depends on what they focus on, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly.
I want to address something in the chat real quick.
Yeah.
So Comic Chat, he brought up that Darth Bane was, how did he put this? He said, if you watch the Clone Wars, it shows Darth Bane in the Sith Temple.
Okay.
Now that is just utter nonsense and trash that Filoni did in the Clone Wars, because Filoni actually broke a lot of canon when he did the Clone Wars, and a lot of people, they toot his horn, but that guy's made a lot of mistakes when it came to canon.
Right.
There's no way that Darth Bane was ever on Korriban in a damn temple, because he was destroyed by his apprentice Darth Zana, and it wasn't anywhere near no temple on Korriban. So that was actually just nonsense.
Huh. So is he saying he was like a statue, or he was actually there?
No, they're saying that he's like interred in one of the tombs on Korriban with all the other Sith lords, and he was never interred in one of those tombs.
That's correct. He wasn't interred. If you've read any of the books that were about him and his apprentice, Darth Zana, is that what her name was?
Yes.
Love that story.
That's a good story. I think Bear told me, or OG, one of you, OG, you did a whole thing on that, didn't you?
Darth Bane? No. Oh, I read the trilogy, but I didn't do. I'm getting ready to join in on the book club with Ryan Kennel and Lethal Lightning about the Darth Bane trilogy. And when you look at the timeline, Darth Bane's trilogy basically was at 980 BBY, and then you have the Clone Wars in 22 BBY.
Mm-hmm. Big difference.
So that doesn't make sense unless,
right.
And I don't think he's entombed or his Sith essence is entombed in that in the temple.
Mm-hmm.
From far as I know and I can remember.
Well, now, did the Clone Wars start previous to the series? Start previous to the sale, or did it happen after the sale?
Previous.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was something George okayed.
He okayed it, but then also too, there are interviews because Filoni basically talks himself up as an apprentice to George, and that he worked exclusively with him. And I get that he has worked side by side because there's pictures and everything, but also like Zahn can say that.
Right.
All the writers can say that.
Right. They all worked with him to make
Exactly, because
EU
that's the
things.
owner. He sets the rules. And yeah, we have him in Disney trilogy or Disney Star Wars now, which is good because then we have someone, and also Zahn, he's writing again, but we're not going to get the same stories or the same caliber of stories that were in the past because it's not under George the Heart.
Well, don't forget Freddie Bro Prince said he was, number 2. So
yeah,
Good old method.
oh, what a
he never
douche.
worked with George. He worked after the fact.
Yes, he did, and he's such a douche. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
that guy. He looks. And you put it the right way. And I've been in recovery now for 10 years. I hate putting anybody on Front Street, but that interview he did where he was, Star Wars is for kids, mother effer. He looked high as a kite, dude. And
He looked like a meth head.
He really did. He looked like
a
he was
meth head.
jonesing, and I felt bad for the guy. I actually felt bad for him.
Yeah, and I did cover that stupid interview on my channel, along with what they did with Han Solo, basically taking Luke's medal and selling it for alcohol to Maz Kanata in that Force Scavenger novel book or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Now, people have also tried to use that the EU against me with because I get really aggravated with this trilogy of movies. And Itchy, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but this trilogy, they gave you homework. If you wanted to understand what the hell they were talking about in these movies, you had to either read a book afterwards, a comic afterwards, to get any more depth into what they were talking about. Now people try to say, well, that relates back to, the prequel series in the EU. I disagree. I think they did it because they screwed up and they were trying to fix their own mistakes.
Well, yeah, all of the movies previously were their self-contained unit. You could understand them in and of themselves, and the expanded universe expanded on those things. Some people are making the distinction between Legends and Disc Canon by calling it the expanded universe and the explanatory universe.
Yeah.
Right.
Because Disc Canon is basically explaining all of the plot holes and the problems in the films.
And that's what I call it too, is my tagline in my videos is basically, I'm your Legends girl trying to make it in this Disc Canon world. And I have also said too, that when I talk about Disney, Star Wars, EU, I refer to as explained universe because they're going back explaining all their plot holes.
Yeah. So, that's kind of my take on it as well. They're not expanding anything. They're trying to explain all of the problems. It's just a sad state of affairs.
Yeah, and then going back to Filoni, like I said, he talked himself up with George, and mind you, he worked alongside George as we already established, but also there's also videos on him saying that he went against what George and even the story group wanted.
Unreal.
So I mean, so take that all, just take all as what he said. Basically, he's talking himself up over the mistakes he's made or over the intentional stuff he's done.
That's
and we
Filoni you're talking about?
Yes, and we had fans call him out at conventions about certain characters he brought in from the expanded universe or from basically the lore into the Clone Wars, and either mistitled them or basically changed the character up and where they're from.
Wow. So just to get off topic real quick, if you guys are listening live right now or listening later, please double check and check everybody in the panel's YouTube channel to make sure you're still subscribed. A lot of people are losing subscribers, and I just found that I was no longer subscribed to Itchy's channel. So I just re-subscribed, even though I did it about 8 months ago, and I'm your 550th subscriber. So congratulations on that, man.
Unreal. Thank you very much.
Yeah, man.
Hey, Scott, I don't know if you had actually seen the thing that YouTube just posted on there. They said that there's some kind of glitch that they have going on where if you go into your creator studio, it may show you one thing, and if you look at your homepage, it'll show you a different number.
Yep.
They're saying that there's a discrepancy of numbers, but it doesn't necessarily mean subscriber loss. That's what they're claiming.
And I understand that. I have two different numbers. I do have
tell me.
Yeah, I was just going to say real quick, Bear, but Itchy, I was actually subscribed to, and they unsubscribed me. I just had to resubscribe to them. So verify that. Yeah.
Yeah, it happened to me. I was modding on Shaun Stackhouse's channel, and I got the notification. I went on his channel, and I started modding, and halfway through my modding session, it unsubscribed me.
Wow.
But YouTube is trying to claim that that's not what it is. Now, who knows what the real truth is, because you're never going to get it.
Well, I think they're making excuses so they don't get a backlash.
Well,
and their other tagline to that was, "We're working on it to fix it." Picture me with quotations, you know.
Yeah, I just if you want to support your favorite YouTuber, you know, it doesn't have to be me. It doesn't have to be, just whoever you really enjoy watching. Please make sure you're subscribed, like and share their stuff. I know it seems like a hassle, but it really does help that YouTube creator grow. You liking and commenting and sharing's big. If you got a video you like of theirs, share it on one of your social media things. It will really help people out. The only way that this fandom can keep growing. Yes, we have some really big dogs in our group, but a lot of us are under, some of us under 1,000, a lot under 10,000. If we can keep helping each other grow, we can change, Hollywood. I believe this, because we already are seeing it happen. We affected the rise of Skywalker, as a group. We affected it. And I think that's, even though it didn't help it, we affected it. And I think that's a good thing.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Because what's our motto?
We rise together.
Exactly.
Fourth wave, baby. All right, Bear, should we close this one up, or does anybody else have something they want to talk about?
Well, let's take a look at what they've done with The Rise of Skywalker.
Okay.
Some of the things that they've done. What they've changed, what they tried to imply, and what was the strongest character, if there is one.
Well, there's a OP character, definitely. Her name is Rey.
Yeah, besides her and her flaws, a lot of them. Did you think maybe that Ben was a little bit more fleshed out?
I like to say that Ben didn't speak from the time he supposedly, I don't even really know if he ever came back to be Ben, because he never actually said one word. Did you ever realize that in this movie? He did not speak after the
transition from Kylo Ren to Ben, though.
Could have been better.
Would you say it could have been better, but it was a lot more fleshed out than the other ones?
No, yeah. I think Adam Driver in general did a great job. I think it was his acting. There was one part in that movie where, and also let me just say this, anybody on the panel, if you have to go, I mean, we've been here for a long time, jump out. If not, stay with us. But I just want to, he did this one part right when they did the stupidest thing of force. What do you want to call that? Transporting, force delivery. Right. When she gave him his lightsaber through the force, he makes like a gesture, like let's do this now. And it was one of the best moments of that movie. And it's because of Adam Driver. He's a really, really good actor. And I feel bad that he got stuck in this trilogy because he's the best thing to come out of this
I've seen him in some other stuff, and I like him in other stuff.
He's a great actor, man. He's a great actor.
If you've seen him in Black Klansman, his character, I'm pretty impressed with it. It's funny, too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went into this movie because, I went into this movie and, I was going to basically review it and watch it. I didn't even get popcorn. It didn't feel right. It did not feel right. And what struck me as really odd, Nick, it just seemed like nails on chalkboard. These people were clapping at inappropriate moments. That's
you
all
saw
right,
the footage,
your
right?
uncle dying, you're not supposed to clap and frickin' laugh, because that's basically what C-3PO is. He's the droid uncle, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that was horrible.
When they unplugged him and erased him and then reset him, they laughed.
Well, because they
freaking clapped.
There was no stakes.
I couldn't freaking believe it. Now, let me tell you, the people next to me, there was about 6 or 7 guys next to me because I was in seat 7, my wife was in seat 8, so there was at least 6 guys to my right, and not a single one of them clapped at all. The woman sitting next to my wife, rocking back and forth nervously, did not clap once, didn't laugh once. There were some people behind us that clapped and laughed and stood up and then sat back down, and there were some people scattered throughout the theater that did, but there was quite a few people who didn't. And I'm just beside myself. My wife, in some of the more slower moments, she actually fell asleep. And I go, you sleeping? And she raised her head, yeah, for a little bit. So she fell asleep during it. And I'm just really just sickened by these people clapping at the most inappropriate times during this movie.
Can I elaborate or expand a little more on this?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, so I'm going back to the EU, original EU. So in Truce at Bakura, and also to, I can't pin down the novel, but it is in Legacy of the Force when we have Vistar Kai in there, and the tribe of the Lost Tribe of the Sith, when 3PO had to translate some languages that he did not understand. R2 helped him out. He was not reprogrammed, and they solved it to where he can translate the language and got back to Luke or Leia or whoever needed the information.
Yep.
And so coming from an EU perspective and knowing the lore and reading it and expanding on it, that was a huge. I didn't watch the movie, but I did get various clips from the movies sent to me, and that was one of them. And that to me just took me out of my disbelief, because you don't have to reprogram him. And if you wanted to pay homage to these legacy droids, they could have played it that way.
So
that's my expansion on that one, or my take on that.
They didn't want to do anything with legacy. I mean, you get someone, R2D2. I really would love if someone took, Data Racer or someone like that tells me how many minutes R2D2 actually was in this trilogy, because it's not hours. It was minutes. It was minutes. And it aggravates me. And then they could have done some really cool things. So, you got R2D2 and you got C-3PO, giving the line, "I want to take a last look at my friends," which, okay, whatever.
Okay, what friends? They're not.
Yeah,
your friends
exactly.
Are not there.
Get them anyways.
Exactly. You don't even know these people, and they didn't even care. They didn't even care you were going through this. But
what about the computer port?
Yeah, I know. I was going to let you get to that after this. So they erase his mind, okay, and reboot him. But yet the R2D2 part, and Bear has a great point about that, because we are sticklers for what they've already shown us. But they reprogram him, and boom, nothing happened. What I would have loved to see, that when he rebooted him, he remembered everything back to episode 1. I thought that would have been cool. His reboot made him remember everything. But I believe he rebooted to the point right before The Last Jedi, another FU to The Last Jedi. And I thought that was kind of funny too.
When
Yeah, from
well,
Dave.
see, I don't think that he would have remembered even towards the prequel trilogy because at the end of Revenge of the Sith, he had his
Right. He gets right, but I would have thought it would have been funny. It would have been funny because they have no rules.
Yeah,
if
of
they
course.
went all, you know what I mean? Like they went all the way back. That like R2 has been holding on to this stuff for decades, but
It's in his deep core memory.
exactly something like that. But even Bear pointed out a big flaw with R2D2. Like they couldn't even respect that character to put what is it again, Bear? Go ahead.
Well, basically, they have the Star Wars books that's called basically they're like a
manuals,
base.
right?
Manuals, and they show you what each character does, especially the droids. Well, on R2D2, the thin blue arms that pop out, and he's got different kinds of tools he can use, and those are his arms and stuff that he can do stuff. Well, in this, right behind the lower arm is a computer socket. That's absolutely, totally incorrect, and it breaks canon. Because next to those arms, if you look to the right, there's an up and down rectangular panel. When you open it at the top, that's where the computer port is.
Yeah, and they just don't even respect the character enough to look into their own history to get it right. And that's probably a part of them having to redo 75% of that. I know that's hearsay, but I think we can agree now that they had to reshoot 75% of this movie. I mean, they had an actor confirmed for this movie that wasn't even in it. The Matt Smith. And I really would have liked to see that son of Mortis kind of idea go. And that's why the Sith dagger was even involved. Like there was so many flaws.
Do you realize that the son of Mortis was killed in the Clone Wars?
Yep.
Are you kidding me?
No, not kidding.
He was killed in the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
I just really started it. I started the Clone Wars. I'm doing I don't know if you guys ever heard of it's like a chronological viewing of it. So you jump around seasons. I'm doing that right now. And I did not know that. See, I love this fandom because I almost feel like I'm a normie. I think I know, compared to everybody else I know in real life, I am a dork. And then I know you guys are amazing. So
yeah, Anakin killed the son of Mortis.
He tempted him, correct?
Huh?
He tempted Anakin, right?
Yeah, they Filoni tried to go the route of having Anakin be the chosen one to be the father.
Okay.
And so there, he was proving himself and all this, and so I'm just gonna try not to spoil too much for you. And in order to get this balance and get everything back into harmony, because the ones were fighting amongst themselves, the father went ahead and distracted the son of Mortis, basically the one to where he killed himself, and it distracted the son where Anakin could kill him.
Okay. All right.
And so they were going to bring him back for Rise of Skywalker because why? Makes no sense. If you're not watching the Clone Wars and you're not an EU lore person, you're not going to get it. Well,
that's the reason they took him out. They filmed it. People have reported this. Insiders have said they filmed it, and that Bob Iger, that was his one big thing, is he couldn't let it happen because not enough people would know who this character was. But so maybe you explain it a little bit.
Yeah, the thing is that he's already dead as well.
Yeah, so now that changes everything.
Yeah, and then that's just like Palpatine. He's dead as well. And so even if you can explain it and you want to bring people back to the Clone Wars and that pay homage to it so people can start purchasing the Clone Wars more because the Clone Wars is now Disney canon, there's a great way of telling that story. He doesn't necessarily have to be in a main villain if you want to revert back to Clone Wars and have people go back to it.
Okay.
But he died, and even in the original EU, they were retconning all that to where Luke says, maybe and this was doubtful thinking of Luke, maybe because my father chose not to step up as the father, Maybe that's why we have chaos today. Maybe that's why we have chaos or Abeloth today. So they're trying to retcon it a little bit to make it make more sense and not take away from Anakin's overall story arc of the Chosen One during that time. That's how I see it. So,
well, the way the story happened with Abeloth and Luke Skywalker, him being a Grandmaster, you know, they couldn't give us that. You know, that would be just way too much for them, you know?
Yeah.
Because I read those stories, and you know what? I wanted to see something like that.
and that's where
to that.
Yeah, and that's where if they would have played their cards right and not coined the original EU as legends and take it out of the lore, if they would have kept everything and they would have started their sequel trilogy right after Crucible, then they can expand it on it a lot more, because it was setting up the story.
I think
they had such a beautiful garden to work in. They had to destroy it first,
right? And I think they were supposed to bring this character into light in The Last Jedi, but Ryan did whatever Ryan wanted to do. So, you know, that was their mistake, allowing him to do what he wanted to do and not follow JJ's storyline. Truthfully, they should have followed, like Itchy's saying. I would have loved to see a movie of the Wills, about the Wills. I think that would have been really interesting.
As portrayed in the Clone Wars, that one episode where Yoda goes and visits the Wills.
Right.
Yeah, that would man, that's just a potential blooming garden in itself of story.
Yeah.
But, you know, once again, it would be something good they could give us, and they're not interested in that. They're interested in what they can sell, what they think is profitable. And they don't get it. They don't understand.
Well, that's because Disney doesn't have any common sense.
Because it's like they sure as hell don't listen to the fans, and they don't listen to what we want. If they would listen to what we wanted, and they made something halfway decent somewhere in the middle that we could say, hey, okay, yeah, we'll accept that. But they can't even do that because, you know, they make money. They don't like to make money, obviously.
That's crazy, man.
Hey guys, right now,
I gotta bounce real quick. I'm sorry, OG, to interrupt you. I interrupt everybody though. Sorry about that. I am the king of it. I gotta bounce.
My bitch gets paid by the hour. You gotta.
You know what? I got rid of you, dog. You are the worst pimp I've ever seen in my life. You can't even keep your freaking stay on the panel. You keep bouncing out. All right, so
that's because you're upsetting me so much.
Well, you got to find yourself some new hoes, buddy. I'm moving on.
You got to make me more money.
More money. You can't even make your lightsaber videos, you weird phallic symbol motherfucker.
Look, the hoe goes out there and works, and I collect the money. That's the way it works. As soon as you understand how this relationship works,
you don't even make me feel pretty. Okay, so I gotta get going. Thank you guys for having. Well, it's shit. This is one of my streams. Thank you for being on our panel with me and Bear, and sometimes Tommy. Itchy, it's an honor, man.
Thank you.
I hope we can stay in touch. I follow you on Twitter, so maybe I'll DM you. I'd like to talk to you about a couple things anyways. So
sure, sounds good.
Awesome, man. And OG, really, I'd love to do some more streaming with you. I love your knowledge. So hopefully we can hook up again soon. So guys, have a great one. Tommy, go bite one. Later.
Yeah, all right, Scott.
You want to learn about pimping? I'll show you pimping.
I'm gonna have to freaking exercise my pimp hand on him because bitches just don't learn.
Pip slap right there.
Now, I want to float this one to you guys. Now, considering the success of The Mandalorian, since I haven't seen it, but I always hear everybody talking good about it, wouldn't it make more sense that if Disney was going to continue on a successful path, that they would dig back into the EU and actually bring out something people would want and do something based on the Bounty Hunter Wars?
Yes, in fact, on my channel, so here's a channel plug. I am expanding on the Bounty Hunter Wars trilogy right now. So I already reviewed 1 and 2 books of the trilogy. So Mandalorian Armor and Slave Ship. And I'm moving on to the hard merchandise. And reading that and seeing how well Boba Fett is played out in this trilogy and looking at Mando, I think there's a lot of missed opportunities even within Mandalorian. Even though they're, and mind you, they are going with their lore and everything. So in Disney's lore, the Fetts are not truly, or the Fetts only stole the the armor and stuff, and that they're not Mandalorians. But when you look at the lore and how the Mandalorians evolved, it turned into a culture of adoption for survival.
Yes.
Well, that was after the original Mandalorians were wiped out, after the Jedi were duped into destroying them.
By, was it the Rakata evaded them, or there was a war and then they got shoved out of Coruscant and they found their planet, another planet, and they named it Mandalore. Yeah. So I'm curious. I'm watching it just to see where they go with it, and if they do keep true to some of the lore, we might see some more legends intact with this, maybe, than anything else. But I'm not holding my breath on this at all.
Yeah, missed opportunity. It's a shame.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was saying before, it's like, they need to roll the dice. They need to take some chances.
Yeah. And then, like, when you look at Fett, he is, with his bounty hunter's way and his no-nonsense way and how he was raised, and even Jango Fett was chosen to be to be the person that they clone because of his raise. He was raised by Jaster Morrell, a Mandalorian, and he became a Mandalorian, and that's why they sought out the best of the best to develop these clone troopers.
Mm-hmm.
And so seeing Boba Fett, how he was feared and respected by the Empire as well as the overall galaxy as a bounty hunter and a Mandalorian, and he's no nonsense. His ass would have turned in Baby Yoda, no questions asked.
Oh yeah. You know it.
So now we have this mercenary Mandalorian, who basically, they all have conscience, and all that. And even when you read about Boba Fett, he does have a conscience, because someone was saying to him, and I think it was in Legacy of the Force. No, not Legacy. Was it Legacy? Yeah, it was Legacy. And basically, someone was trying to bribe him, saying, well, I'll do work for you, don't kill me, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, oh, well, I have a daughter you can have. And he's like, I hate bastards like you, basically, who use their kids as a pawn, their women as a pawn.
Mm-hmm. That's the one thing about the Mandalorians is their fallback rule: don't harm women, don't harm children. That's against the code.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I can get that code because I follow a similar code.
Yeah, but when you see Boba Fett, when he has a job and he's hired for a job, he finishes it. And so that's why I was laughing and giggling about, if this was Baby Yoda or the Yoda species baby, he would have turned that baby in. No questions asked. And so that's the difference. And people may agree with me or may not agree with me, and that's fine. So.
Well, the Boba that we know that was established in the movies, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it would have been the Boba Fett that was established toward the end of the EU, when he was training Jaina,
mm-hmm.
maybe not.
No, because when we get in Legacy or Fate of the Jedi, he teams up with Dala. And with the Mandalorians, and that when they siege the temple and stuff. But of course, the Mandalorians have a big thing against Jedi anyway, so that's already established.
Right.
But so Boba basically does his job and does it well, and no questions asked, and takes care of things.
That is true.
So, that's just my take on that. So that's why I like to compare and contrast. Not saying that the Mandalorian is bad and stuff. I'm just saying, if it was a Boba Fett or a Fett story, it would have been done totally different, maybe. So who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, there is quite a difference between the young Boba Fett that was in Star Wars when he was first introduced, because Darth Vader was like no disintegrations, and it's interesting how the Mandalorian clears up what a disintegration is. Yeah, pretty much toast fibers after it explodes. Disintegrated, and compared to with Boba when he's training Jaina Solo. And I found that to be a very interesting story because, of basically the bitter enemies that they have felt with the Jedi. And I thought that was a very interesting story. The fact that they would even train the Jedi.
Yeah, and we do see him struggling with that, like should I, shouldn't I not? But then he also has respect in those and in enemies basically as well.
Yeah. And the fact that him and Han Solo had basically grudgingly buried the hatchet.
And he even says, you were just someone that I was seeking a bounty on. No, no feelings attached. Basically, is what he tells him. So that's why. And then because he has that respect for Han, and Han's daughter is a Solo basically and a Jedi, he wants to get revenge on Darth Caedus is the reason why he takes her in.
Yep.
Because this is just his way of getting revenge.
I mean, that's the Boba Fett movie we wanted to see, right?
That would have been great. Training.
The ships that they were developing and stuff like that with their ore and their alloy.
Yeah.
Top dollar.
And even the nano viruses that they were creating, which kept, Boba Fett away from Mandalorian, the world, even though he was ruler at the time. So I mean, they could have expanded on so much stuff. I mean, it's amazing how all the missed opportunities they have that they missed and that they could have used in creating even the sequel trilogy. So, and we have a moment of silence to grieve.
Yes. So, Itchy, is anything in that world that you want to talk about?
Not at this time. I've read some books in the EU. I've read some comic books, some of the old Dark Horse comic books, but I'm not a completionist by any means. I don't have a very deep knowledge of it. I have just kind of a cursory knowledge of it.
Yeah, it's been a while since I read all of them, but man, there are a lot of books in the EU.
Yeah, it's fortunate now that good Star Wars isn't being produced anymore.
Oh, that's going to be sought out.
Yeah.
Because people are going to want good stories, and when you want good stories, you're going to find those good stories, and there's a lot of good stories in the EU.
All right, you guys. I have to take off now, dinner time and all that stuff here, and I need to bounce back onto my painting that I'm developing right now too as well.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be taking off too here.
Yeah, so let's plug your channels and let's thank the chat for coming and hanging out.
All right, so I'll go first. All right, so thank you everybody who have participated in the chat. Hello to everybody. If I missed you guys saying hello to me, I apologize. My name is OG Star Wars, and I am your Legends girl trying to make it in this discounted world. You can find me on YouTube and Twitter. So please like, follow, subscribe. And so if you're displaced with the current state of Star Wars, I am here for you. I am your hope. Come visit me for Legends or original EU content. Thank you so much for having me on the live stream. I loved talking with every single one of you and geeking out and talking about the what ifs with Disney Star Wars. And everybody, Ichibaka, Bear, Tommy, everybody, just thank you so much for having me.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night. Have a great one.
Yeah, so I'll go next. Basically, you can find me on my blog, Disney Star Wars is Dumb. You can find me on Twitter at Ichibaka, and I have a YouTube channel as well. And I've got a number of videos up already, and you can check those out.
All right, Tommy, we got your Twitter link.
This is Tommy. I do lightsaber theory videos, and I do a lot of older movie talks. You can catch me on YouTube at Tommy and Ratty Rackinson on Twitter.
All right. Thanks for coming, everyone. Have a great night.